Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sleepy Scares. I know many of you tune in to unwind and drift off into a peaceful sleep, so before you settle in, I'd love for you to drop a comment, letting me know where in the world you're listening from. If you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get cozy, relax, and dive right in. Story 1. In the dark and eerie depths of the abandoned asylum, a chilling tale unfolds. As the moon cast its eerie glow through the broken windows, I ventured into the haunted halls, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. The air was thick with an unseen presence, and an otherworldly silence enveloped me. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty corridors. No response. Only the faint whispers of the wind and the creaking of ancient wooden floors. I proceeded with caution, my footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. The asylum, once a place of healing, now stood as a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. As I wandered, I noticed strange markings and symbols etched into the peeling paint, a cryptic language that sent shivers down my spine. "Lumestein, what secrets do you hold, old asylum?" I whispered, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. Suddenly, a faint moan pierced the silence, followed by a haunting laughter that sent a chill straight to my core. I froze, my eyes scanning the shadows, searching for the source of this unnerving sound. "Show yourself," I demanded, my voice trembling. A figure emerged from the darkness, its form distorted and twisted. It moved with an otherworldly grace, its eyes glowing an eerie shade of yellow. I took a step back, my heart racing as the figure approached, its presence filling me with an overwhelming sense of dread. "Who are you?" I managed to utter, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am the guardian of this place," it replied, its voice like the rustling of leaves in a storm. "A being bound to this asylum, forever watching over the souls that remain." I stood transfixed, my mind racing with questions. "Why do you haunt this place? What happened here?" The guardian's eyes narrowed, and a sinister smile stretched across its face. "The stories you seek are etched into the very fabric of this asylum. They're the screams of the tormented, the echoes of their suffering." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the truth. This place was not merely abandoned. It held a dark and twisted history. The Guardian's presence was a warning, a reminder of the horrors that had occurred within these walls. "Why do you show yourself to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You, brave soul, have ventured where others fear to tread. Your curiosity and courage have awakened me. I offer you a glimpse into the asylum's dark past, if you dare to listen." I took a deep breath, my fear mingling with an insatiable desire to uncover the truth. "I dare. Tell me, what horrors unfolded here?" The Guardian's form seemed to shift and change, its features becoming more defined. "This asylum was once a place of hope, a sanctuary for the troubled, but greed and madness corrupted its purpose. The doctors, driven by power, conducted experiments, pushing the boundaries of ethics and morality." I listened, my heart pounding as the Guardian's tale unfolded. Stories of patients subjected to horrific treatments, their screams echoing through the halls. Tales of doctors who lost their humanity, becoming monsters in white coats. The patients, once innocent souls, were transformed into shells of their former selves. Their minds, broken and fragmented, became a playground for the doctor's dark desires. I shuddered, imagining the pain and suffering endured by those trapped within these walls. The Guardian's presence seemed to intensify, its eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. But the asylum's true horror lies not only in the acts committed, but in the aftermath. The souls of the tormented, unable to find peace, linger here, forever bound to this place. As the guardian spoke, I felt a presence, an unseen force, brush against my skin. The air grew heavier, and a sense of unease settled over me. They are here, aren't they? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The guardian nodded, its form shimmering in the moonlight. Their spirits, forever trapped, roam these halls, seeking release from their eternal torment. I stood in silence, my mind grappling with the weight of this revelation. The asylum, once a beacon of hope, had become a prison for the living and the dead. What can be done to break this curse? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped me. The guardian's smile faded, and its form began to dissipate. Only the brave and pure of heart can offer them solace. It is a task few dare to undertake, for it requires facing the darkness within and without. With that, the guardian vanished, leaving me alone in the haunted asylum. I stood, my mind filled with the stories and secrets I had uncovered. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on me, a burden I now carried. As I made my way out of the asylum, the moonlight cast an eerie glow, illuminating the path ahead. I knew that I had encountered something beyond my understanding, a place where the boundaries between life and death blurred. The abandoned asylum, with its dark history and haunting presence, would forever be etched into my memory. It was a reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the resilience of the human spirit. And so I left, my steps heavy with the weight of this experience, knowing that the asylum's secrets would forever haunt me, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows. Story 2. The email arrived on a Tuesday, the subject line simply reading, "The Blackwood property for Clara, a struggling artist perpetually on the precipice of eviction." It was a lifeline, if a slightly unnerving one. Her eccentric great-aunt Matilda, a woman she barely knew, had passed away and bequeathed her a house, a secluded, rambling Victorian in the heart of Blackwood Forest, known for its oppressive silence and a history whispered about in hushed tones by the locals. Clara, a pragmatic soul despite her artistic inclinations, dismissed the unsettling rumors as folklore. She needed a place to live, and free was free. The bus ride to the nearest town, Oakhaven, felt like a journey back in time. The air grew heavy, the trees taller and denser, their branches intertwining to form a perpetual twilight. Oakhaven itself was a collection of gray stone buildings, their windows like vacant eyes, and the townsfolk regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and veiled apprehension. The key, heavy and intricately carved, felt cold in her hand. The walk to the house was a mile along a rutted path, the silence of the forest broken only by the rustling of unseen things in the undergrowth. The house loomed before her, a Gothic silhouette against the fading light. It was grand, yes, but undeniably decaying, its dark wood siding peeling like sunburned skin, its windows like vacant sockets staring into the soul of the forest. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust and something else, something subtly metallic and faintly sweet, like overripe fruit. Sunlight barely penetrated the grimy windows, casting long, eerie shadows. Clara spent the first few days cleaning, trying to exorcise the ghosts of the past. She found dusty portraits of stern-faced ancestors, moth-eaten tapestries depicting gruesome hunting scenes, and a library filled with leather-bound books whose titles sent a shiver down her spine. The Anatomy of Melancholy, Demons and Their Melancholy, Demons and Their Abodes, The Language of Flowers and Their Hidden Meanings. The first unsettling incident was subtle. A whisper. She'd been in the kitchen, washing a teacup, when she distinctly heard her name, a soft sigh of Clara from just behind her. She whirled around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. Thinking it was fatigue, she shrugged it off. Then came the sounds, late at night, when the silence of the forest pressed against the house like a physical weight. She heard them, scratching noises from within the walls, like tiny claws dragging across wood. Sometimes it sounded like something heavy being dragged across the attic floor. She investigated, of course, armed with a flashlight, but found nothing. Only cobweb-laden emptiness and the unsettling feeling of being watched. As the days bled into weeks, the occurrences escalated. Doors would creak open on their own, a gust of icy air accompanying them even on still nights. Objects would move, a book falling from a shelf, a chair shifting slightly in the corner of her eye. The metallic sweet scent, which she had initially dismissed, grew stronger, permeating the air, clinging to her clothes. It made her nauseous. Her head throbbed constantly. One evening, while sketching in the library, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. She whipped around, and this time she saw it. A flicker of movement in the shadows, like something tall and gaunt retreating into the darkness. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her denial. This wasn't just an old house with settling noises. Something was here. She started researching her great-aunt Matilda. The locals were tight-lipped, their eyes darting away when she asked about the Blackwood property. But in the Oakhaven Library, amongst dusty local history archives, she found snippets, whispers of strange rituals, of disappearances, of a darkness that clung to the Blackwood family line. Matilda, it seemed, had been a recluse, a figure of fear and suspicion. One particularly chilling entry mentioned a hidden room, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. Driven by a growing dread, Clara began searching for this room. She tapped on walls, measured dimensions, her heart hammering with each creak and groan of the old house. Finally, behind a bookshelf in the library, she found it, a section of the wall that sounded hollow. With trembling hands, she ran her fingers along the edge, finding a nearly invisible seam. A push, a click, and a section of the wall swung inwards, revealing a narrow, dark passage. The metallic sweet scent was overpowering here. Thick and cloying. Hesitantly, Clara stepped inside. The passage led to a small circular room, its walls lined with strange symbols, painted in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room was a stone pedestal, and on it lay a tarnished silver locket, intricately engraved with a motif of thorny vines. As Clara reached for the locket, a voice, ancient and rasping, echoed in the room. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You shouldn't have come here, child." Terror seized her. She stumbled back, knocking over a small wooden box tucked into a corner. It spilled open, revealing dried herbs, strange stones, and a handful of human teeth. The scratching sounds from within the walls intensified, closer now, frantic. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and deepen. The air grew heavier, pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She could feel something moving just beyond the edge of her vision. Something tall and gaunt, its presence radiating malevolence. Turning, she fled back down the passage, the rasping voice echoing behind her, closer, more insistent. She burst back into the library, slamming the secret door shut, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. But it was too late. The scratching was no longer confined to the walls. It was coming from inside the room, from the shadows that clung to the corners. She could see them now, the gaunt figures, their limbs unnaturally long and thin, their eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. They were emerging from the darkness, their movements jerky and unnatural, their silence more terrifying than any scream. Clara backed away, her eyes wide with horror. She could feel the house itself turning against her, the floorboards creaking under unseen weight, the air thick with a palpable sense of dread. The metallic sweet scent permeated everything, coating her tongue, filling her lungs. One of the figures lunged, its skeletal hand reaching for her. She screamed, a raw, primal sound that was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the forest. She stumbled back, tripping over a rug, and fell to the floor. The figures were closing in, their silent predatory movements sending shivers down her spine. Desperation lent her strength. She scrambled backwards, her hand landing on something cold and hard, the heavy, intricately carved key to the front door. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged for the door, fumbling with the lock, her fingers slick with sweat. The figures were upon her. She could feel their cold breath on her neck, their skeletal fingers brushing against her hair. With a final, desperate twist, the lock clicked open. She threw the door open and stumbled out into the night. The oppressive silence of the forest, a stark contrast to the cacophony of dread inside. She didn't stop running. She ran blindly through the trees, branches whipping at her face, the undergrowth tearing at her clothes. The rasping voice echoed in her mind. The metallic sweet scent clung to her like a shroud. She didn't dare look back, didn't dare stop. She stumbled onto the path leading to Oakhaven, the dim lights of the town a beacon in the darkness. Exhausted, terrified, she collapsed onto the cold, hard ground just as the first rays of dawn began to paint the eastern sky. The people of Oakhaven found her there, huddled and shivering, her eyes wide with a terror they understood all too well. They offered her shelter, food, but their eyes held a mixture of pity and a knowing fear. They knew what the Blackwood property was. They knew what it did to those who dared to disturb its slumber. Clara never went back. She carried the memory of the house, the scent, the silent figures, like a brand on her soul. She tried to explain, but her words were met with disbelief, or a knowing silence that was even more chilling. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she still hears the scratching, still smells the metallic sweet scent, and she knows, with a certainty that chills her to the bone, that the Blackwood property is still there, waiting. Its darkness patiently biding its time, until the next unsuspecting soul inherits its curse. And somewhere, in the heart of that silent forest, the gaunt figures continue to wait in the shadows, their red eyes gleaming in the perpetual twilight, their silence a promise of horrors yet to come. Story 3. Deep within the ancient ruins of a forgotten city, a chilling tale unfolds. As I ventured into the eerie silence, a sense of foreboding gripped my heart. The air hung heavy with an unseen presence, and I knew this place held dark secrets. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the deserted streets. No answer, only the sound of my footsteps on the cracked pavement. The city, once thriving, now lay dormant, its inhabitants long gone, leaving behind a haunting legacy. I explored the ruins, my curiosity and fear waging an internal battle. The architecture, a blend of ancient and mysterious styles, hinted at a civilization's rise and fall. As I wandered, a chill ran down my spine, for I felt as though someone, or something, was watching my every move. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice breaking the silence. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form shrouded in darkness. "You should not have come here," it whispered, its voice like the rustle of dead leaves. I took a step back, my heart pounding. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. The figure stepped closer, and I could make out its features. A face etched with age and sorrow, eyes that held an otherworldly glow. "I'm the guardian of this place," it said. I am the guardian of this place," it said, "a protector of the secrets that lie within." "Secrets?" I questioned, my curiosity overcoming my fear. "What secrets?" The guardian's eyes narrowed, and a sinister smile stretched across its face. "The secrets of a civilization's downfall, a curse that haunts these ruins, and a power that should never be unleashed." "A curse?" I repeated, my voice filled with dread. What curse? The guardian's smile faded, and its eyes flashed with an intense fury. The curse of eternal suffering, a punishment for those who dare disturb the peace of the dead. I felt a chill run down my spine, and my legs weakened. The dead? I whispered, my voice barely audible. The guardian nodded, its eyes fixed on mine. This city, once a thriving metropolis, fell victim to its own greed and ambition. A powerful artifact, a source of immense power, was sought by many, but those who possessed it paid a terrible price. Their souls were trapped, forever bound to this place, their spirits cursed to wander the ruins in agony. Trapped souls? I asked, my mind reeling with horror. What happened to them? The guardian's voice lowered to a menacing whisper. They are here, all around us. Their cries echo through the streets, their tormented spirits seeking release. But release they shall not find, for their punishment is eternal. I stood frozen, my body trembling. The air grew heavier, and I could sense the presence of the trapped souls, their anguish filling the ruins. Run! The guardian suddenly shouted, its voice filled with urgency. Run! Before it's too late. The darkness is rising, and the dead will claim you. Without hesitation, I turned and fled, my heart pounding in my chest. As I ran through the ruins, the cries of the tormented souls pursued me. Their voices growing louder, I could feel their presence, their desperate pleas for freedom, but I dared not look back. Finally, I reached the edge of the city, the fresh air and sunlight a welcome relief. I collapsed, exhausted and shaken, my mind filled with the horrors I had witnessed. Never return. The guardian's voice echoed in my mind. The secrets of this place must remain buried. For the sake of all that is good and pure, I vowed to keep the guardian's warning close to my heart, for I knew that the ruins held a power that could consume and destroy. The ancient city, with its dark secrets and trapped souls, would forever haunt my dreams, a reminder of the horrors that lurk in the depths of forgotten civilizations. Story 4. The old house stood on a knoll overlooking the gray expanse of the North Sea. Its slate roof was mottled with moss, and the paint peeled like sunburnt skin, revealing the dark wood beneath. For Alara, it was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place to escape the city's relentless hum and the recent heartbreak that clung to her like a shroud. She'd bought it for a pittance, the estate agent's cheerful dismissal of its quirks a little too enthusiastic for her liking. The first few days were peaceful. The wind howled a mournful tune outside, but inside, wrapped in thick blankets, Alara found a strange sort of solace. The silence was profound, broken only by the creaks and groans of an old house settling. It was the kind of silence that held secrets, the kind that whispered of times long past. Then the whispers became more literal. It started subtly, a rustle in the corner of her eye, a fleeting shadow in the hallway. She'd dismiss it as fatigue, the overactive imagination of someone living alone. But the feeling of being watched grew, a cold prickle on the back of her neck that refused to dissipate. One evening, as dusk bled into night, she heard it distinctly. A faint sigh, like a breath held too long and finally released, came from the empty room upstairs. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She told herself it was the wind, a trick of the old floorboards. Anything but what her gut screamed it was. Armed with a heavy iron poker from the fireplace, she crept up the creaking stairs. The air grew colder with each step. The landing was shrouded in shadow, a single window at the end casting longs, distorted shapes on the walls. The room where she'd heard the sigh was empty, save for a dusty roll-top desk and a bare mattress on the floor. Relief washed over her, quickly followed by a sharper, colder fear. The sigh hadn't been from outside. It had been inside the house. The incidents escalated. Objects would move. A book left open on the coffee table would be found closed on a shelf. A teacup carefully placed on the counter would be on the floor, unbroken but overturned. These weren't playful pranks. There was a malevolence to them, a sense of observation, of testing her. The worst was the smell, a cloying, sickly sweet scent, like rotting lilies mixed with something metallic, would waft through the house, clinging to the air, making her gag. It came and went without warning, leaving a lingering sense of unease. Alara tried to rationalize it, faulty wiring causing strange electrical currents, gas leaks producing phantom smells, but deep down she knew. This house wasn't just old, it was haunted. She started researching the house's history. The local library offered little, the librarian's eyes widening with uncomfortable recognition when Alara mentioned the address. "Oh, the old Blackwood place," she'd murmured, avoiding Alara's gaze. "Heard things over the years." Undeterred, Alara delved into online archives. She found newspaper clippings dating back to the early 1900s. The Blackwood family, wealthy merchants, had lived in the house for generations. Then, tragedy struck, a string of unexplained deaths within the family, each one more gruesome than the last. Accidents, the articles called them, but the descriptions hinted at something far more sinister. The final clipping detailed the disappearance of the last Blackwood, a young woman named Eleanor, vanished without a trace. A chill went down Alara's spine. Eleanor. It was a name eerily close to her own. The activity in the house intensified. The whispers became murmurs, sometimes coalescing into a low, indistinct voice. She'd catch snippets, phrases she couldn't quite decipher, laced with a chilling sorrow. The shadows became more defined, darker, lingering longer. She'd see them in the periphery, tall, gaunt figures that dissolved when she turned to face them. One night, she woke to find the bedroom door slowly creaking open. The hallway was pitch black, but she could feel a presence there, an icy wave washing over her. She pulled the covers up to her chin, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. A long, skeletal finger, impossibly pale, slipped through the gap in the door. Its touch was like ice, burning cold against the wood. Alara screamed, a raw, primal sound that ripped through the silence. The finger retreated, and the door slammed shut with a resounding boom that shook the entire house. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. Every creak, every sigh, every shadow sent her heart racing. She lived in a state of perpetual fear, her nerves frayed, her mind teetering on the edge of panic. She tried to leave. She packed a bag, her hands shaking so badly she could barely fasten the zippers. But the moment she reached the front door, an invisible force slammed it shut, the impact reverberating through her bones. She tried the windows. They were all locked, the mechanisms jammed solid. She was trapped. The entity, whatever it was, didn't want her to leave. The voice grew stronger, more insistent. It spoke her name, a soft, mournful whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Alara? Eleanor. It sighed, the sound thick with longing and despair. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, the space she'd avoided until now, she found a small, leather-bound diary hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The pages were brittle and yellowed, the ink faded, but still legible. It was Eleanor Blackwood's diary. Her entries chronicled a growing dread within the house, a sense of something watching, of being consumed. She described the same smells, The same shadows, the same chilling whispers that Ilara had experienced. Then the entries became frantic, filled with a growing terror. Mentions of a presence that craved something, something it couldn't have. The final entry was chillingly abrupt. It's here, in the walls, it wants. The sentence trailed off, unfinished. As Ilara read, the air in the attic grew cold. The scent of rotting lilies filled her nostrils, so potent it made her eyes water. The low moan echoed around her, the sound of immense suffering. A shadow detached itself from the corner of the attic, coalescing into a tall, gaunt figure. Its form was indistinct, flickering like a poorly lit candle. But she could feel its gaze on her, cold and hungry. Terror seized her. She dropped the diary and stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of dusty boxes. The figure drifted closer, its form solidifying, becoming more defined. She could see the hollow sockets where its eyes should have been, the thin, stretched skin clinging to its skull. It reached out a skeletal hand, its touch promising not pain, but something far worse. Oblivion. Ilara screamed again, a desperate, futile cry against the encroaching darkness. She scrambled back, her breath catching in her throat. She could feel the entity's presence filling the attic, suffocating her, pressing down on her with the weight of centuries. "Eleanor," the voice whispered, closer now, right beside her ear. It wasn't malevolent, not exactly. It was a voice of profound loneliness, a desperate plea for connection, twisted by years of isolation and despair. She understood then. It wasn't trying to harm her, not intentionally. It was trying to merge with her, to become whole again, to reclaim the life it had lost so long ago. Her name, so similar to Eleanor's, had drawn it to her, a beacon in the darkness. The skeletal hand touched her cheek. It wasn't cold anymore. It was burning, a searing heat that spread through her veins. Her vision blurred. She could feel something pushing into her, a foreign presence invading her mind, her body. She tried to fight it, to resist, but it was too strong, too ancient. Her thoughts became muddled, confused. Images flashed through her mind. Horse-drawn carriages, gas lamps flickering in the night, a young woman laughing in a long white dress. Eleanor's memories, they were becoming her own identity, Ilara, began to fade. Like a photograph left out in the sun, the fear receded, replaced by a deep, aching sadness, a longing for a life she had never lived. The entity's presence intensified, consuming her, dissolving the boundaries of herself. Her body felt heavy, unfamiliar. She looked down at her hands, and they seemed longer, thinner, the skin almost translucent. The last vestiges of Ilara's consciousness screamed in protest, a final desperate cry, before being swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The figure in the attic stood still, its form now solid, its hollow eye sockets filled with a faint ethereal light. It looked down at its hands, flexing its long, slender fingers. A faint smile touched its lips, a sad, knowing smile. Finally, it whispered, the voice now a blend of Eleanor's sorrow and Ilara's fading fear. The scent of rotting lilies filled the attic completely, masking the dust and decay. The house was silent once more, the restless spirit finally at peace, its loneliness assuaged. But in the heart of the old house, something new had taken root, a merging of two souls, forever bound within the decaying walls, waiting for the next whisper of the wind, the next unsuspecting visitor who might share a name, a face, a spark of the life that was so desperately craved. The house on the knoll, overlooking the gray sea, remained, watchful, and waiting. Its silence deeper, its secrets more profound than ever before. Story 5. High up in the desolate mountains, where the cold wind howls and the snow never seems to melt, lies an ancient fortress, its walls weathered by time, and its secrets long forgotten. I ventured into this frozen realm, drawn by the whispered tales of those who dared not speak its name. As I approached the imposing structure, its massive stone blocks seemed to shift and move, as if alive, breathing in the bitter cold. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional caw of a raven circling overhead. "Welcome, traveler," a voice echoed through the stillness, sending a shiver down my spine. "You have much to learn about this place, and even more to fear." I turned, my heart pounding, to see a figure emerge from the shadows. His face was hidden by a deep cowl, but his eyes, cold and piercing, fixed upon me with an otherworldly intensity. "Who are you?" I edged, my voice shaking. "I am the guardian of this realm," he replied, his voice like the crack of thunder. "And you have intruded upon a place where few dare to tread and even fewer return." I seek knowledge," I stammered, my courage faltering. "The tales of this place speak of power and ancient secrets. I wish to understand." The guardian laughed, a chilling sound that sent a chill through my very bones. "Knowledge, you say? You say?" "The knowledge here is not for the faint of heart. It is a path of darkness, a descent into madness. Few can withstand the truths that lie within these walls." "I am prepared," I insisted, my resolve strengthening. I have come too far to turn back now." The guardian regarded me with an unreadable expression. "Very well, traveler. If you must know, you shall. But remember, once you step beyond this threshold, there is no turning back. The choices you make here will echo through eternity." With that, he gestured towards a massive iron door, its surface etched with intricate runes. I approached it with trepidation, my hand hovering over the cold metal. "Beyond this door lies a realm of shadows and nightmares," the guardian warned. "Are you certain you wish to continue?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "I am." As I pushed open the door, a wave of icy air rushed out, carrying with it a scent of decay and something else, something primal and ancient. The room beyond was vast, its walls lined with ancient tomes and artifacts, each one a testament to a dark and forgotten era. "This is but a glimpse of what lies within," the guardian said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Each book, each artifact, holds a piece of the puzzle. But beware, for some knowledge is best left untouched." I wandered through the chamber, my fingers tracing the ancient symbols etched into the books. Each one seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if alive and aware of my presence. "The power here is immense," I whispered, my voice lost in the vastness of the room. "But at what cost?" "The cost is always high," the guardian replied, his voice close behind me. "For every gain, there is a sacrifice. Every step forward, a step into the abyss." I turned to face him, my curiosity battling with my fear. "Then why do you guard this place? Why not destroy it or hide its secrets forever?" The guardian's cowl shifted, and for a moment I thought I saw a glimmer of sadness in his eyes. "Because sometimes the darkness must be faced. The world needs reminders of the consequences of unchecked power. This place is a warning, a testament to the fragility of our souls." I stood in silence, taking in the weight of his words. The chamber seemed to pulse with an energy both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "You have seen enough for now," the guardian said, his voice gentle yet commanding. "Return to the world, traveler, and carry the lessons you have learned here. But remember, the choices you make will shape your destiny. Choose wisely, for the consequences echo through eternity. With that, he turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving me alone in the chamber of secret. I stepped back through the iron door, the weight of the fortress's knowledge heavy on my shoulders. As I descended the mountain, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow-covered peaks. I knew my journey had only just begun, and that the true test lay ahead, a test of my courage, my resolve, and my ability to face the darkness within. The ancient fortress, with its secrets and its guardian, would forever haunt my dreams, a constant reminder of the fine line between power and madness. Story 6. The old house stood on a hill overlooking the town, a gaunt skeletal finger pointing towards a perpetually overcast sky. Ivy, thick as pythons, choked its stone walls, and the windows, like vacant eyes, stared out with an unsettling emptiness. Locals whispered about it, about the family who vanished, the strange lights sometimes seen in the upper windows, the chilling silence that seemed to cling to its very foundations. I, of course, being a stubborn, thrill-seeking writer named Elias, was drawn to it like a moth to a flickering, potentially deadly flame. My editor, bless his skeptical heart, had tasked me with writing a piece on local legends, hoping I'd uncover some overlooked historical gem. Instead, I'd become obsessed with the Blackwood Manor, the house on the hill. I'd read every faded newspaper clipping, every hushed online forum post, piecing together a fragmented narrative of tragedy and unexplained departures. The Blackwood family, once prominent in the town, had simply ceased to exist. No bodies were found, no definitive explanation offered, just an eerie void in the town's collective memory, ignoring the well-meaning warnings of the town's elderly librarian. A woman who regarded the manor with a palpable fear, I decided to spend a night inside, armed with a flashlight, a voice recorder, and a healthy dose of misguided bravado. I approached the imposing wrought iron gates. They groaned open with a sound like a long-suppressed sigh, as if the house itself was reluctantly acknowledging my presence. The air inside the property was instantly different, heavy, stagnant, and carrying a faint, metallic tang that I couldn't quite place. The path to the front door was overgrown, stones jutting up through the weeds like crooked teeth. The front door itself was massive, oak darkened with age and studded with iron. Surprisingly, it wasn't locked. A simple turn of the handle, and I was inside. The interior was plunged into near darkness, the only light filtering through the grimy windows, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with every movement. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, and an underlying sweetness that made my stomach churn. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. The grand foyer was a testament to former grandeur, a sweeping staircase with intricately carved banisters, a faded tapestry depicting a hunting scene, and a chandelier choked with cobwebs. But now, decay had set in. Plaster crumbled from the walls. The tapestry was moth-eaten, and the once gleaming wood floors sagged ominously under my feet. I turned on my flashlight, its beam cutting a hesitant swathe through the gloom. The silence in the house seemed to press in, amplified by the stories I had read, the whispers I had heard. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of unseen things, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I started to explore, moving slowly, methodically. The living room held remnants of a life abruptly left behind. A half-finished game of chess on a dusty table. A book lying open on an armchair, its pages yellowed and brittle. Upstairs, the bedrooms were eerier still. A child's room, painted with whimsical animals, contained a rocking horse frozen mid-rock, and scattered toys that seemed to wait for unseen hands to pick them up. The master bedroom held a four-poster bed with the impression of bodies still visible in the dust of the mattress. As I delved deeper into the house, a creeping sense of unease began to settle over me. It wasn't just the darkness or the decay. It was something else, something intangible, the feeling of being watched, of a presence lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. The air grew colder, and the metallic scent became more pronounced, tinged with a new sickly sweetness that reminded me of overripe fruit. In the library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with silent books, I found a small leather-bound diary. Its pages were brittle and yellowed, the ink faded, but I could still make out the elegant script. It belonged to Eleanor Blackwood, the matriarch of the family. Her early entries spoke of a happy life, of a loving husband and children. But as I turned the pages, a darker tone began to emerge. Whispers of sleepless nights, of strange noises in the house, of shadows flickering in the corners of her eyes. She wrote of a growing fear, an unnamed dread that seemed to permeate the walls of the manor. The later entries became increasingly frantic, fragmented, hinting at something malevolent, something unseen that was tightening its grip on their lives. She wrote of her children's nightmares, of her husband's increasing paranoia, of a feeling that the house itself was alive, watching them, consuming them. The last entry was chillingly simple. It's inside the walls now. We can't escape. A sudden sharp crack from upstairs made me jump, the diary slipping from my trembling hands. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence. I told myself it was just the settling of the old house, the wind in the eaves, anything but what my instinct screamed at me. But then I heard it, a faint whispering sound, like dry leaves skittering across a stone floor. It seemed to be coming from the hallway outside the library. I froze, my flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The whispering grew louder, closer, morphing into something I could almost understand, yet couldn't quite decipher. It was sibilant, low, and utterly unsettling. Slowly, cautiously, I moved towards the door, my breath caught in my throat. The whispering stopped abruptly as I reached the threshold. The hallway was empty, the shadows stretching long and distorted. But as I scanned the darkness, I saw it, a flicker of movement at the far end of the hall, near a closed door I hadn't noticed before. A cold dread washed over me, a primal fear that went beyond logic or reason. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that something was behind that door, something that had been here for a long time. I started to back away, my eyes fixed on the closed door. The whispering started again, softer this time, but closer. I could feel the cold air emanating from behind the door, a tangible chill that seemed to seep into my bones. Suddenly, the doorknob began to turn, slowly, deliberately. My blood ran cold. I didn't wait to see what was behind it. I turned and ran, stumbling through the darkened hallways, the whispers echoing behind me, seeming to chase me through the creaking house. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get out. I tripped over unseen objects, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly, illuminating fleeting glimpses of decaying grandeur and unsettling shadows. The metallic, sickly, sweet smell was overpowering now, making me gag. As I reached the foyer, I could hear the whispers directly behind me, closer than ever. I fumbled with the front door handle, my fingers slick with sweat. It wouldn't turn. Panic clawed at my throat. Desperate, I threw my weight against the door, but it remained stubbornly shut. The whispers were right at my back now, a chorus of sibilant voices that seemed to be speaking my name. Then I saw a shadow, elongated and impossibly thin, stretching across the floor from beneath the door. It moved, not with the wind, but with a life of its own, reaching towards me like a grasping claw. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that tore through the oppressive silence of the house. I threw myself back, away from the door, landing hard on the dusty floor. The shadow retreated. Disappearing back under the door, I scrambled to my feet, my mind filled with a desperate urgency. The windows. I had to get to a window. I ran to the nearest window, fumbling with the latch. It was rusted shut. Frantically, I smashed the glass with my elbow, shards showering around me. A rush of cold night air filled the room, carrying the scent of damp earth and freedom. Without hesitation, I clambered through the broken window, ignoring the sharp edges that tore at my skin. I didn't stop running until I was far away from the house, the gaunt silhouette receding into the darkness behind me. I never went back to Blackwood Manor. I never wrote the story. The memory of that night, the whispers, the feeling of being watched, the shadow beneath the door. It's enough to send a shiver down my spine even now. The house still stands on the hill, overlooking the town, its vacant windows staring out with that unsettling emptiness. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind is just right, the locals say they can still hear faint whispers carried on the breeze. Whispers that seem to emanate from the old house on the hill. A chilling reminder of the darkness that lies within its darkness. Walls. Walls. A darkness that perhaps never truly left. Story 7. In the dead of night, I found myself drawn to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. It loomed over me, its dark, weathered walls hiding countless secrets. The moon cast an eerie light, illuminating the broken windows and the creeping vines that threatened to consume the structure. I heard tales of this place, whispered stories of horror and madness, but my curiosity and a sense of unease compelled me to investigate. As I stepped closer, the air grew heavy and stagnant. The house seemed to breathe, its very presence oppressive. I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. "Is anyone there? Show yourself!" No response, only the creak of floorboards and the soft rustle of unseen creatures scurrying in the darkness. I entered, my heart pounding, and the door creaked shut behind me. The house seemed to sigh, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The first room I entered was a study, its walls lined with ancient books, their pages yellowed and fragile. A sense of foreboding washed over me as I noticed the books were not just old, but also wrong. The titles were twisted, the knowledge within corrupted. "Who are you?" a voice hissed from the shadows. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. A figure emerged, its features hidden in darkness. "You should not be here. This place is not for the living." I'm looking for answers," I stuttered, my voice trembling. "Answers to what?" the figure asked, its voice like the rasp of dry leaves. "To the horrors that took my family," I replied, my gaze steady despite my fear. "Horrors that began here, in this very house." The figure stepped closer, its form becoming more defined. It was a woman, her face etched with age and pain. "You seek revenge, but beware, for this house feeds on such emotions. It will twist your mind, make you one of us." "I won't let that happen," I said, my resolve strengthening. "Tell me what happened here. Tell me what happened here. Tell me the truth." She sighed, a mournful sound, and began to speak. "This house was once a haven, a place of learning and wisdom, but greed and ambition corrupted its purpose. Dark rituals were performed, souls were torn apart, and their essence was used to fuel this place." "What kind of rituals?" I asked, my curiosity battling with my fear. "Rituals of sacrifice," she whispered. They whispered, "the taking of lives, the extraction of their power. The house grew stronger, but at a terrible cost. The souls, trapped and tormented, became its guardians, its servants. I shuddered, imagining the countless lives lost within these walls. "Can they be freed?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps," she said, her eyes glinting with a hint of hope. "But it requires a great sacrifice, one that few are willing to make. The house must be destroyed, and with it, all the souls it holds captive." "I'll do it," I said, my determination growing. "I'll find a way to break this curse." The woman shook her head. "It is not so simple. The house will fight back. It will tempt you with promises of power, of knowledge beyond your wildest dreams. But it is a lie, a trap. You must resist, or you will become another victim, another soul, trapped forever." I nodded, my mind racing with the weight of her words. "I understand the risk. I won't let it consume me. I'll find a way to destroy this place, to set the souls free." "Then go," she said, her voice fading into the darkness. "Find the strength within yourself, and may the light guide you." I left the study, my heart heavy with the burden of what I had learned. The house seemed to sense my intentions, for it began to stir, its energy pulsating through the walls. I could feel its anger, its desire to keep its secrets hidden. As I explored further, I discovered rooms filled with strange artifacts, each one a testament to the dark practices that had taken place. In one chamber I found a hidden basement, its floor covered in dried blood and the remnants of countless sacrifices. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I could almost hear the echoes of their screams. "You will not escape," a voice boomed, shaking the very foundations of the house. I turned, my heart pounding, and saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was a man, his eyes burning with an unholy light. "This house is my domain, and you shall join the ranks of the damned." "I won't let you win," I said, my voice steady despite the terror that threatened to consume me. "I will put an end to this madness once and for all." The man laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can defeat me? You are but a mere mortal, and this house is my creation. It is a part of me, and I will not let it be destroyed." I stood my ground, my resolve unwavering. "Then I will take you with me," I said, my voice filled with determination. "I will not let this house stand, not while it continues to corrupt and destroy innocent lives." The man's eyes narrowed, and his form began to shift, transforming into a creature of pure darkness. "You have made your choice," he hissed. "Prepare to face the consequences." I braced myself, knowing that the battle ahead would be fierce. The house itself seemed to come alive, its walls pulsating with an otherworldly energy. I could feel the power of the trapped souls, their desire for freedom, and I channeled that energy within me. The fight was brutal, a clash of light and darkness. The man, fueled by the house's power, unleashed a torrent of dark magic, but I countered with my own determination and a newfound strength. I fought with every ounce of my being, refusing to back down. As the battle raged on, the house began to crumble, its walls cracking and its energy fading. The man's grip on his power weakened, and I could sense his desperation. With one final surge of energy, I unleashed a powerful blast, a purification of light that consumed the house and the man within. The house collapsed, its remnants falling into a pile of dust and debris. The air was heavy with a sense of liberation, and I could feel the souls, once trapped, finally finding peace. I stood amidst the ruins, my body exhausted but my spirit triumphant. The house, a symbol of darkness and corruption, was no more. I had faced my fears, confronted the evil that dwelled within its walls, and emerged victorious. As I turned to leave, I felt a gentle breeze brush against my face. It was as if the souls, now free, were sending me a silent thank you. I knew that my journey had not been in vain, and that the town would finally find peace, free from the horrors that had plagued it for so long. With a sense of purpose fulfilled, I walked away from the ruins, ready to face the world with a newfound strength and a story to tell. The house, once a beacon of darkness, had become a reminder of the power of light and the resilience of the human spirit. Story 8. High up in the desolate mountains, where the air grows thin and the wind howls through barren valleys, an ancient evil stirs. I, Dr. Ethan Moore, a renowned paranormal investigator, find myself drawn to this desolate place, seeking answers to the unexplained phenomena that have plagued this region for centuries. As I venture deeper into the mountainous wilderness, the sense of foreboding grows with each step. The sun, a mere memory, casts long shadows across the rocky terrain, and an eerie silence hangs heavy in the air. My breath, visible in the cold, serves as a constant reminder of the isolation that envelops me. This place, it feels alive, I mutter to myself, my voice echoing off the craggy peaks. Suddenly, a faint otherworldly light catches my eye. Follow its source, my heart pounding in my chest, as if it knows something I don't. The light leads me to a hidden cave, its entrance shrouded by a thicket of thorny vines. What secrets lie within? I asked, my curiosity battling with my fear. With a deep breath, I push aside the vines and step into the cave, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and an unearthly chill runs down my spine. Hello, I call out, my voice trembling. Is anyone there? No response, only the echo of my own voice. I continue deeper, my footsteps echoing off the cave walls. The further I go, the more the cave seems to breathe, its every crevice and crack alive with an otherworldly energy. This can't be natural, I whisper, my hand reaching for the crucifix I keep hidden in my pocket. Suddenly, a loud, bone-chilling scream pierces the silence. I freeze, my heart stopping in my chest. The scream is followed by a chorus of unearthly cackles, as if 1,000 demons had been unleashed. What is that? I manage to stammer. The cackles grow louder, and a figure emerges from the darkness, its form distorted and twisted. It moves towards me with an unnerving grace, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Who are you? I ask, my voice quivering. You should know, Dr. Moore, it hisses, its voice like the rasp of 1,000 years. You've been expecting me. Expected you? I stumble over my words, my mind racing. But how? I've never... Oh, but you have. It interrupts, its voice dripping with malice. You've sought me out. Drawn. Gargarnos. You've always known I was here, waiting. No, this can't be, I protest, backing away. I'm a scientist, a rational man. There's no such thing as what, Dr. Moore? It taunts, its form shifting and twisting, becoming more terrifying with each transformation. Evil? Darkness? The things that go bump in the night? I find myself cornered, my back against the cold, damp wall of the cave. The creature looms over me, its presence overwhelming. Why have you come for me? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. It leans closer, its breath hot and foul on my face. Because you've disturbed what should have remained hidden, you awakened an ancient evil, and now you must pay the price. With a swift movement, it lunges, its claws digging into my shoulder, sending searing pain through my body. I scream, the sound joining the demonic cackles that fill the cave. No. Please, let me go, I plead, my voice filled with desperation. It laughs, a maniacal cackle that echoes through the depths of the cave. Too late, Dr. Moore. Too late to turn back now. I struggle, my body weak and my mind clouded with fear. The creature's grip tightens, and I feel my life force being drained, my strength ebbing away. Why? Why me? I managed to croak. Because you dared to intrude upon my domain. It hisses, because you sought to uncover the mysteries that should have remained buried. As my vision fades, I see the creature's form transform once more. Its eyes burning with an unholy light. It leans close, its breath hot on my face, and whispers, "Welcome to your worst nightmare, Dr. Moore." And with that, darkness consumes me, and I'm lost in the depths of an eternal night. Story 9. I found myself drawn to an ancient, forgotten sanctuary. It was a place of mystery, its secrets hidden within the towering peaks. As I ventured closer, a sense of unease crept into my bones, for this sanctuary held a dark and disturbing past. The path to the sanctuary was treacherous, with steep cliffs and rocky terrain. I had to navigate carefully, my footsteps echoing off the sheer walls. The further I went, the more the silence pressed upon me, a heavy weight on my shoulders. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice breaking the stillness. No answer came, only the faint rustling of the wind through the high-altitude trees. Finally, I reached the sanctuary, an imposing structure built into the mountain itself. Its architecture was a blend of ancient styles, with intricate carvings and symbols adorning the walls. I stepped inside, the entrance leading to a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in the darkness. "Hello," I whispered, my voice trembling. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form shrouded in a long, dark cloak. "You should not have come here," it said, its voice deep and gravelly. "This place is not for the living." I took a step back, my heart pounding. I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to learn about this place, its history. The figure moved closer, its eyes glowing an otherworldly green. "You seek knowledge, but knowledge here comes at a price. A price many have paid with their lives. A price many have paid with their lives." I'm not afraid," I lied, my voice quivering. "I just want to understand." The figure laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Understand what?" "The horrors that lurk within these walls, the secrets that have driven men mad." I remained silent, my curiosity warring with my fear. "Very well," the figure said, its voice softening. "I will show you, but remember, once you see, there is no turning back." It led me deeper into the sanctuary, through narrow passages, and into a chamber unlike any other. The walls were covered in ancient writings, their meanings lost to time. In the center of the room stood a strange altar, its surface carved with intricate patterns. "This is the heart of the sanctuary," the figure explained. "Here, the ancient ones performed their rituals, summoning powers beyond our understanding." I approached the altar, my eyes drawn to a strange object placed upon it. It was a crystal, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. "The crystal," I whispered. "What is its purpose?" The figure's eyes narrowed. "It is a key," a gateway to realms beyond our own. The Ancient One sought to unlock its power, to peer into the unknown. But many who dared to touch it never returned. I reached out, my hand trembling as I touched the cool surface of the crystal. A jolt of energy surged through me, and I saw visions, dark, disturbing images of creatures from another realm. "No," I cried, pulling my hand back. "Make it stop." The figure placed a hand on my shoulder. "You have seen a glimpse of the truth. Now, you must decide. Will you turn back, or will you continue on this path, seeking the knowledge that may destroy you?" I stood there, torn between my fear and my insatiable curiosity. The sanctuary's secrets called to me, a siren song I could not ignore. "I must know more," I said, my voice steady, despite the tremors within. "I will face whatever lies ahead." The figure nodded, its eyes glinting with an unreadable emotion. "Then follow me, and together we shall uncover the sanctuary's darkest secrets." And so, we ventured further, delving into the depths of the sanctuary, where the true horrors awaited. The air grew colder, and an eerie mist filled the passages, obscuring our vision. "We are close," the figure whispered. "The true power of this place lies ahead." We reached a chamber unlike any other, its walls pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The air crackled with electricity, and a low rumbling sound filled the room. "This is it," the figure said, its voice filled with awe and fear. "The Ancient One's final creation, a gateway to another dimension." I stepped forward, my curiosity overpowering my fear. The gateway loomed before me, a swirling vortex of energy, ready to consume anyone who dared to cross over. "What lies beyond?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The figure turned to me, its eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Beyond this gateway, there is only madness and destruction. The Ancient One sought to control it, but it consumed them instead. Now it awaits its next victim." I stood there, frozen, my mind battling between my desire for knowledge and the impending sense of doom. "You must decide," the figure urged. "Cross the threshold, and you will never return. This is the end of the path you have chosen." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I must know," I said, my voice steady. "I will cross over, no matter the cost." With a determined step, I entered the gateway, the swirling vortex enveloping me. A rush of energy coursed through my body, and I felt myself being pulled into another realm, a place of pure chaos and darkness. The figure watched as I disappeared, its eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "Farewell, brave soul," it said, its voice carrying a hint of sadness. "May you find the truth you seek, even if it means your own destruction." And so, I ventured into the unknown, leaving the sanctuary and its dark secrets behind. The price of knowledge was high, but I was willing to pay it, no matter the consequences. As I stepped into the unknown, the sanctuary's secrets remained, waiting to be uncovered by another curious soul, brave enough to face the horrors that lay within. Story 10. The radio crackled, a static hiss punctuated by the dispatcher's voice, thin and worried. "Unit 7, do you copy? Over." Rain lashed against the windshield of Sergeant Lena Hansen's cruiser, blurring the already desolate landscape. Miles of windswept moorland stretched in every direction, the only discernible landmarks the skeletal silhouettes of ancient stone walls. "Copy that, dispatch," Lena replied, her voice tight. "Still no sign of them, over." Understood, Sergeant. Continue search pattern Alpha 9. The family's been missing since yesterday morning. No contact, no trace. Over. Lena sighed. Missing hikers on the moors were common enough. Usually they were found disoriented and soaked, but alive. But this was different. The Peterson family, a couple and their young daughter, were experienced hikers. They'd left their car at the designated trailhead and then vanished. No dropped belongings, no footprints leading astray, just gone. She drove slowly, the beam of her headlights cutting through the driving rain. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the windows and making the hairs on the back of her neck prickle. It was the kind of night that made even the most rational person believe in things that went bump in the night. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Off to the right, near a cluster of gnarled, windswept trees, something pale lay on the ground. Lena braked sharply, her heart pounding. She grabbed her flashlight and a thick waterproof coat before stepping out into the storm. The wind tore at her, and the rain felt like needles on her exposed skin. She trudged through the muddy ground, the beam of her flashlight dancing ahead. As she got closer, the pale object resolved itself into a discarded backpack, small, brightly colored, definitely belonging to a child. A wave of nausea washed over Lena. She crouched down, carefully unzipping the pack. Inside, she found a half-eaten bag of crackers, a water bottle, and a well-loved stuffed rabbit. Nothing else. No note. No clue. Just the abandoned belongings of a missing child. Lena straightened up, scanning the area. The trees offered little shelter. Their branches twisted and skeletal against the stormy sky, but something about their arrangement felt off. They weren't growing naturally. They seemed almost deliberately placed, forming a rough circle around a patch of ground obscured by tall, swaying grasses. Driven by a growing sense of unease, Lena pushed through the wet grass. The ground beneath her feet was soft, almost spongy. And then she saw it. A hole. Not a natural depression. Not an animal burrow. Perfectly round hole, about 1 meter in diameter. The edges clean and sharp, as if bored by some immense drill. The darkness within was absolute, swallowing the beam of her flashlight without reflection. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Lena's professional detachment. This wasn't a hiking accident. This was something else. Something deeply, terrifyingly wrong. She reached for her radio, her hand trembling. "Dispatch, I have a possible location. Moorland Sector Alpha 9, near the old standing stones. I found what appears to be a hole. A large, unnatural hole. Requesting immediate backup. Over." The dispatcher's voice, usually calm and efficient, held a note of alarm. "A hole, Sergeant? Can you elaborate?" Over. Lena swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on the gaping maw in the earth. "Negative, dispatch. I can't explain it. I can't explain it. Just send backup and tell them to bring lights. Lots of lights. Over." As she waited, the wind seemed to whisper around her, carrying with it faint, unsettling sounds. Not human sounds, not animal sounds. Something lower, guttural, almost like the earth itself was groaning. The first of the backup units arrived with sirens wailing, their headlights cutting twin swaths through the darkness. 2 uniformed officers, both looking grim, approached Lena. "What have you got, Sergeant?" Officer Davies asked, his voice tight. Lena gestured towards the hole. "This." The child's backpack was just over there. Davies and the other officer, Miller, approached the edge cautiously, their flashlights illuminating the blackness within. A moment of stunned silence was followed by a low whistle from Miller. "Jesus," he muttered. "What the hell is that?" They set up floodlights, bathing the area in a harsh, artificial glow. The hole remained in impenetrable darkness, an unsettling void in the rain-soaked landscape. They tossed a flare down, but it seemed to vanish without illuminating anything. More officers arrived, along with paramedics and a search and rescue team. They set up a perimeter, the atmosphere thick with tension and unease. No one wanted to get too close to the hole. It exuded an aura of wrongness, a palpable sense of something alien and malevolent. As the search and rescue team prepared their gear, Lena couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The wind seemed to carry whispers. The shadows danced in the periphery of her vision. She kept glancing at the tree line, convinced she'd see something move, something watching them from the darkness. One of the search and rescue technicians, a young woman named Sarah, was rigging a rope for descent. She was pale and visibly nervous. He was pale and visibly nervous. "Sergeant," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Did you hear that?" Lena strained her ears. The wind howled. The rain hammered down. But beneath the surface, there was something else. A low, rhythmic thrumming, like a giant heartbeat deep within the earth. The other officers heard it too. Conversation ceased. Flashlights were lowered, and everyone stood frozen, listening to the unnatural pulse emanating from the hole. Suddenly, Sarah screamed. Everyone jumped, turning towards her. She was staring down into the hole, her face contorted in terror. Something touched me," she shrieked, scrambling back. Something reached up. Panic erupted. Officers drew their weapons, their eyes darting nervously into the darkness. The rhythmic thrumming intensified, growing louder, vibrating through the ground. Lena felt a primal fear grip her. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. This was something far more sinister, something ancient and hungry. Without warning, the rain stopped. The wind died down. An unnerving silence descended over the moor, broken only by the heavy breathing of the officers and the relentless thrumming from the hole. Then, the ground began to tremble. Not a violent earthquake, but a subtle, unsettling vibration that ran through their feet and up their spines. Cracks spiderwebbed across the muddy ground around the hole, and from the depths of the darkness, a sound emerged, a low, sonorous moan, like a wounded beast in unimaginable pain. It was a sound that burrowed into your bones, the sound that spoke of vast age and unimaginable suffering. Moaning grew louder, morphing into a chorus of guttural growls and hisses. The air grew thick with a cloying, earthy smell, like damp soil and decay. One of the officers screamed and pointed. From the blackness within the hole, tendrils of shadow began to writhe and writhe, reaching out like grasping claws. Terror seized Lena. This was beyond anything she could have imagined, beyond anything she could comprehend. Her training, her experience meant nothing in the face of this primordial horror. The shadow tendrils snaked across the ground, their movements fluid and unnervingly fast. They brushed against the legs of the officers, who recoiled in horror. One of the tendrils wrapped around a discarded flashlight, crushing it instantly. The moaning intensified, reaching a deafening crescendo. The ground bucked and heaved. The hole seemed to widen, its darkness deepening, as if something immense was stirring within. Lena knew they had to get out now, but her feet felt like lead, her mind paralyzed by fear. She could only stare, transfixed, as the shadows reached further, their touch leaving behind a trail of chilling cold. One of the officers, young and pale, began to chant, a string of incoherent prayers tumbling from his lips. Another broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. The shadow tendrils reached Lena. She felt a cold, slick touch on her boot, then on her hand. It wasn't painful, but it was the most terrifying sensation she had ever experienced, a violation of her very being. Then, from the darkness, a single pale light flickered into existence. It was small, faint, but it pulsed with an unnatural luminescence. As they watched, mesmerized, the light grew larger, revealing a shape behind it. A shape that defied description, amorphous, shifting, a grotesque collage of limbs and eyes and mouths that shouldn't exist. It pulsed with the same rhythmic thrumming they had felt on the ground, and the moaning emanated from its core. Lena finally found her voice, a hoarse whisper of pure, unadulterated terror. "Run!" she gasped. "Just run!" Chaos erupted. The officers scattered, tripping and falling in their haste to escape the monstrous apparition emerging from the hole. Lena turned and ran, her lungs burning, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, the moaning intensified, followed by a sound that chilled her to the bone. A sound like something immense dragging itself out of the earth. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She just ran. The image of the pulsating, unholy thing seared into her mind. The rain started again, washing away the mud and the blood, but nothing could wash away the terror she had witnessed. She never saw the Peterson family. No one ever did. The hole on the moor was eventually filled, covered over. But the memory of that night, the moaning from the darkness, the grasping shadows, would haunt Lena Hansen for the rest of her days. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her soul, that something ancient and terrible had been disturbed on that desolate moor, and that humanity had only glimpsed the edge of its horrifying reality. Story 11. It was a story that had haunted the minds of many, a legend whispered by those who dared to venture into the depths of this forsaken institution. As I stepped through the creaking doors, the air grew heavy with an eerie silence. The asylum, once a beacon of hope for the mentally afflicted, now stood as a testament to the horrors that lurked within. The walls, painted with a thick layer of grime, seemed to whisper tales of suffering and despair. "Welcome, stranger," a voice echoed through the empty corridors. I turned, my heart pounding, to find a figure shrouded in a tattered white gown. Their face was hidden in the shadows, but their eyes, a piercing blue, held an otherworldly glow. "You seek the truth, don't you? The truth about Ravenwood's darkest secret?" I nodded, my curiosity and fear waging a battle within me. "Who are you?" I managed to utter. The figure stepped closer, their presence filling me with an inexplicable dread. "I am but a ghost, a remnant of the tormented souls who once roamed these halls. I am here to guide you, to show you what lies beyond the veil of sanity." With that, they began to lead me through the asylum's twisted maze. Each step brought us deeper into the heart of darkness, where the echoes of tortured screams lingered in the air. "This place," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It's not what it seems." The ghostly figure turned, their eyes narrowing. "Oh, but it is, my friend. Ravenwood is a gateway to a realm beyond our understanding, a place where the line between life and death blurs, and where the souls of the damned are forever trapped." I shuddered, the weight of their words settling upon me like a heavy blanket. "But why? Why are they trapped here?" The figure's voice softened, carrying a hint of sadness. "It is a tale of hubris and madness. You see, Ravenwood was not always a place of healing. It was once a research facility, a playground for those who sought to unlock the secrets of the mind. But their experiments, driven by greed and power, crossed the boundaries of ethics and morality. As we wandered through the abandoned wards, the air grew colder, and an eerie mist began to form. The ghostly figure pointed to a room, its door slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of darkness within. "In that room," they said, their voice carrying a chilling finality, lies the key to Ravenwood's darkest secret, a secret so horrifying it will leave you questioning the very nature of existence. I hesitated, my fear threatening to overwhelm me. But the ghostly guide's eyes, filled with an unearthly determination, urged me forward. Stepping into the room, I was met with a sight that froze my blood. The walls, once white, were now stained with a dark, viscous substance. Instruments of torture, rusted and macabre, hung from the ceiling, their purpose clear yet unimaginable. "This," the ghostly figure whispered, their voice carrying a weight of sorrow, "is where they performed their experiments, where they tore apart the minds of the innocent in a futile attempt to harness the power of the soul." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the true horror of Ravenwood. The souls of the victims, forever trapped in this twisted realm, their screams echoing through eternity. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why did they do this? Why did they do this?" The ghostly figure turned, their eyes reflecting the pain of 1,000 tormented souls. They sought power, a power beyond their comprehension. They believed they could control the very fabric of reality, but in their arrogance, they unleashed a force that would forever curse this place. As I stood there, engulfed in the darkness of Ravenwood's secret, I understood the true horror. It was not just the physical torture, but the eternal damnation of souls. A punishment that would haunt the halls of Ravenwood forever. With a final mournful glance, the ghostly guide faded into the mist, leaving me alone with the weight of their tale. I knew then that Ravenwood's secret would forever haunt my dreams, a reminder of the darkness that lurks within the human psyche. As I escaped the asylum's grasp, I vowed to keep their story alive, a warning to all who dared to venture into the depths of madness. For Ravenwood's secret, a tale of horror and despair, would forever echo through the corridors of the damned. Story 12. The rain hammered against the corrugated iron roof of the observatory, mimicking a frantic drum solo. Inside, Dr. Anya Sharma, her face illuminated by the cool glow of a monitor, barely registered the noise. Her focus was entirely on the screen, displaying a pulsating anomaly detected deep within the Horsehead Nebula. It wasn't a supernova, nor a rogue planet. It was something else. Something that defied all known astronomical models. Anya, a woman who found solace in the cold vacuum of space and the predictable dance of celestial bodies, felt a prickle of unease. She'd spent years meticulously cataloging nebulae, her passion bordering on obsession. This anomaly, however, felt like an unwelcome intrusion, a discordant note in the symphony of the cosmos. She'd first noticed it weeks ago, a faint flicker on the long exposure images. Initially, she'd dismissed it as interference or a faulty sensor, but the anomaly persisted, its rhythmic pulsations growing stronger, its shape becoming more defined. Now, it resembled a dark, swirling vortex, a tiny black hole forming within the vibrant tapestry of the nebula. A tremor ran through the small, isolated observatory, not from a faulty generator this time, but a deeper vibration that resonated in Anya's bones. The lights flickered, plunging the room into near darkness for a heart-stopping second. When they flickered back on, the anomaly on the screen had grown noticeably larger. Anya's logical, scientific mind fought against the rising tide of fear. She checked the equipment, ran diagnostics, but everything seemed to be functioning perfectly. This wasn't a technical malfunction. This was something external. The rain intensified, mirroring the frantic beat of Anya's heart. She knew she should contact the university, report her findings, but a strange compulsion held her back. It was like witnessing the unfolding of a forbidden secret, a cosmic truth best left undisturbed. Days turned into nights, consumed by Anya's increasingly frantic observations. The vortex continued to expand, its darkness swallowing the surrounding starlight. Strange sounds began to emanate from the telescope, low, guttural hums that seemed to vibrate the very air In the observatory, outside, the local wildlife had gone silent, their usual nocturnal chorus replaced by an unnerving stillness. One particularly stormy evening, as lightning illuminated the surrounding landscape in stark flashes, Anya noticed something new within the vortex. Faint, intricate patterns began to materialize, like glyphs etched into the fabric of space. They weren't any known language, yet they seemed to pulse with a disturbing intelligence. Driven by a morbid curiosity, Anya adjusted the telescope's filters, trying to get a clearer image. As the patterns sharpened, a wave of nausea washed over her. The glyphs weren't random. They formed a complex repeating sequence, a message, and it felt sickeningly familiar, as if a forgotten nightmare was clawing its way back into her consciousness. Suddenly, the observatory door creaked open. Anya jumped, whirling around. It was just the wind, she told herself. The latch probably wasn't secured properly, but a cold draft snaked through the room, carrying with it a faint metallic scent. She returned to the monitor, her gaze fixed on the swirling vortex. The glyphs pulsed faster now, their rhythm mirroring the frantic pounding in her ears. And then she understood. The familiarity wasn't from a dream. It was from a feeling, a deep, primal fear that resonated within her DNA. A low growl echoed from the back of the observatory. Anya spun around again, her heart leaping into her throat. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, playing tricks on her eyes. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. Silence. She told herself it was the storm, the isolation getting to her. But a growing sense of dread told her otherwise. She wasn't alone. The hum from the telescope intensified, becoming a deafening drone that seemed to vibrate her very skeleton. On the monitor, the vortex pulsed, and the glyphs flared with an eerie, internal light. Anya felt a strange pull, a hypnotic lure towards the screen. As she leaned closer, the metallic scent grew stronger, cloying and acrid. The dark, shimmering tendril snaked out from the telescope. Not a beam of light, but something far more substantial. Something that writhed and pulsed with an alien life. Panic seized Anya. She stumbled back, knocking over her chair. The tendril stretched further, its tip splitting into 3 delicate, almost skeletal fingers. They reached for her, their movement unnervingly deliberate. She scrambled backwards, her eyes wide with terror. This wasn't some astronomical phenomenon. This was something alive, and it was coming for her. The tendril brushed against her arms, and a searing coldness shot through her veins. Her vision blurred, and a whisper echoed in her mind, not through her ears, but directly into her thoughts. It was a language of pure emotion, a symphony of fear and despair. She tried to scream, but her throat constricted. The tendril tightened around her arm, its grip surprisingly powerful. She clawed at it, her nails scraping against a smooth, obsidian-like surface. Looking back at the monitor, she understood the message within the glyphs. It wasn't an invitation, but an announcement. The vortex wasn't a natural occurrence. It was a doorway, and something was coming through. The tendril pulled her closer to the telescope, its movements relentless. She could see her reflection in the dark surface, her face contorted in horror, her eyes wide with the dawning realization that she was witnessing the arrival of something ancient and unimaginable. The hum from the telescope reached a crescendo, and the observatory seemed to vibrate violently. The air crackled with an unseen energy. Anya braced herself for impact, for oblivion. Then the lights went out again. This time, it wasn't a flicker, it was a complete and utter darkness that swallowed the observatory whole. The hum ceased. The metallic scent vanished. The tendril released its grip. Anya gasped for breath, her heart pounding. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so violently she could barely grasp it. The screen illuminated her face, pale and streaked with tears. She had to get out. Now, stumbling through the darkness, she reached the door, her fingers fumbling with the latch. She pulled it open and plunged out into the storm. The rain lashed against her skin, a cold, cleansing balm. She looked back at the observatory, a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. The telescope dome was still, silent. Had it all been a hallucination, the product of exhaustion and isolation? She started to run, her bare feet slipping on the wet grass. She didn't know where she was running to, only that she had to get away from that place, from that thing. As she ran, she glanced back at the sky. The storm clouds had parted briefly, revealing a sliver of the Horsehead Nebula, and within its heart, the dark vortex still pulsed, a silent, malevolent eye staring back at her. It wasn't gone. It wasn't gone. It was waiting. Anya stumbled, falling to her knees in the mud. She looked up at the night sky, no longer filled with the comforting predictability of stars, but with an overwhelming sense of dread. The universe wasn't empty. It was full of things humanity wasn't meant to see, things that lurked in the cosmic shadows, patiently waiting for their moment. And she had just opened the door for one of them. The rain started to fall again, washing away her tears, but not the chilling memory of the darkness, the metallic scent, and the whisper in her mind. She was no longer a scientist observing the universe. She was prey, and the hunt had just begun. Story 13. Deep within the haunted mansion, an eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft creak of floorboards and the distant howl of the wind. As I stepped further into the dimly lit corridors, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. The walls, adorned with faded portraits of long-forgotten ancestors, seemed to whisper secrets I dared not uncover. "This place gives me the chills," I whispered to my companion, Sarah, who stood by my side, her eyes wide with an equal measure of curiosity and fear. "Shh! Let's keep our voices low," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "We don't want to attract any unwanted attention." Together, we ventured deeper, our footsteps echoing off the cold marble floors. The mansion's secrets lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. In one particularly dark corner, a faint glow caught my eye. "Look, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's something glowing over there." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the faint light. "We don't know what we might find." As we approached, the source of the glow became clearer. It was a small, ancient book, its pages illuminated by an otherworldly light. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and carefully lifted it from its resting place. "Be careful," Sarah warned. "We don't know what kind of power this book might hold." I opened the book, and a rush of energy surged through me. The pages, written in an unknown language, seemed to pulse with an ancient magic. I felt a connection, as if the book were speaking to me, revealing its secrets. "It's incredible," I breathed, my eyes scanning the mysterious script. "I feel like I can almost understand it." "Be cautious, Alex," Sarah urged. "We don't know the consequences of tampering with such powerful knowledge." I ignored her warning, my curiosity overpowering my better judgment. I began to read, the words flowing into my mind like ease. The book's ancient wisdom revealed a dark history, a tale of a powerful sorcerer and his quest for ultimate power. It spoke of a ritual, a dark ceremony that could unleash unspeakable horrors. "Sarah, listen to this," I said, my voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "It talks about a ritual that can bring back the dead, but at a terrible cost." She grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with terror. "Alex, we must put the book back. We don't want to awaken whatever forces are bound within these pages." But it was too late. As I finished reading, a chilling wind swept through the room, causing the book to flutter and the portraits on the walls to shift into story. The air grew heavy, and an otherworldly presence filled the room. "Run, Alex," Sarah shouted, her voice filled with panic. "We've unleashed something terrible." We fled, our hearts pounding, as the mansion came alive with an evil energy. The portraits seemed to come to life, their eyes following our every move. The floorboards creaked and groaned, as if the very house itself were awakening from a deep slumber. As we reached the mansion's entrance, a figure emerged from the shadows, its form shrouded in darkness. It stepped forward, and in that moment I felt a chill run down my spine. "You have disturbed an ancient power," the figure spoke, its voice deep and menacing. "Your curiosity has awakened something that should have remained dormant." Sarah and I froze, our eyes fixed on the shadowy figure. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "I am the guardian of this place," it replied. "And now you must face the consequences of your action." With those words, the figure raised its hand, and a surge of energy shot towards us. We braced ourselves, but the energy passed through us, leaving a trail of icy coldness in its wake. "What was that?" Sarah cried, her voice filled with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my body trembling. "But we need to get out of here now." We ran, our hearts pounding, as the mansion's secrets continued to unfold around us. The air grew thicker, and an unearthly chill settled upon our skin. As we reached the mansion's gates, a final chilling voice echoed through the night. "Your fate is sealed," it said. "The price for your curiosity will be paid." We fled, our minds filled with terror and uncertainty. The mansion's secrets had been unleashed, and we were now forever marked by its dark power. From that day forward, we lived in fear, knowing that the consequences of our actions would forever haunt us. The mansion's dark legacy followed us, a constant reminder of the horrors that lay within its walls. And so a tale of the haunted mansion and its ancient book became a warning, a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting to be awakened by those who dare to venture into the unknown. Story 14. The humid air hung heavy, thick with the scent of blooming magnolias, and something metallic and faintly unsettling, not the usual summer smells of savannah. Amelia adjusted the strap of her messenger bag, the worn leather cool against her skin. She was here for a story, one whispered about in hushed tones in the smoky back rooms of antique shops and hushed coffee dates. Not an old house, not this time. This was the Magnolia Bloom Sanatorium, or what remained of it, a skeletal structure of rusted iron and crumbling brick, choked by vines that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. The place had been abandoned for decades, its history a tangled mess of rumors and unverifiable accounts of experimental treatments. And, worse, Amelia, a freelance journalist with a penchant for the macabre and a healthy disregard for common sense, had been chasing this story for months. The official records were scrubbed, the locals tight-lipped, but the whispers persisted, whispers of patients who never left, of screams echoing in the cypress swamps surrounding the property, of a doctor with eyes that burned with an unholy light. The sun, a pale disk behind the humid haze, cast long, distorted shadows that danced around Amelia as she navigated the overgrown path leading to the main entrance. The iron gates, twisted and corroded, hung open like a silent invitation. A shiver traced its way down her spine, a primal unease that had nothing to do with the humidity. Inside, the air was stagnant and stale, the scent of decay overpowering the sweetness of the magnolias outside. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the silence. Paint peeled from the walls like sunburned skin, revealing layers of faded wallpaper underneath. The silence, however, was deceptive. Beneath it, Amelia could hear the faint creaking of the building settling, the rustling of unseen things in the shadows, and a low, almost imperceptible hum that vibrated in her teeth. She pulled out her notebook and a small audio recorder. The official story was that the sanatorium had closed due to financial difficulties, but the whispers suggested something far more sinister. Patients developing strange compulsions, exhibiting violent tendencies, muttering about things that lurked in the darkness. And then, the disappearances. Amelia moved through the echoing hallways, her footsteps crunching on shattered glass and fallen plaster. Empty rooms lined either side, their purpose suggested by the remnants of furniture. A rusted bed frame, a toppled-over nightstand, a porcelain sink cracked down the middle. Each room felt imbued with a lingering sadness, a palpable residue of suffering. She found the operating theater on the second floor, a large, brightly lit room in its day, now shrouded in gloom. The outfloor was stained a dark reddish-brown, the stain stubbornly clinging to the grout. A massive surgical lamp hung precariously from the ceiling, its glass cracked and dusty. A cold dread settled in Amelia's stomach. This was where the worst of it had supposedly happened. She spent hours exploring, documenting, listening to the whispers of the past. She found patient records waterlogged and moldy, hinting at bizarre treatments involving electrical currents and strange concoctions. She found restraints, thick leather straps with buckles that still clicked with a chilling finality. She found drawings scrawled on the walls in what looked like dried blood, distorted figures with elongated limbs and vacant eyes. As the light began to fade, casting long, eerie shadows, the atmosphere inside the sanatorium grew heavier, more oppressive. The humming sound intensified, becoming a low thrum that seemed to resonate within her bones. Amelia started to feel a growing sense of unease, a feeling that she was not alone. She turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hallway, in the deepening gloom, stood a figure, tall and gaunt. It was silhouetted against the last vestiges of daylight filtering through a broken window. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, a silent sentinel. Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. She reached for the pepper spray in her bag, her hand shaking. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely a whisper. The figure remained motionless. Then, slowly, deliberately, it began to turn its head. Amelia could just make out the features in the dim light. A pale, elongated face, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that seemed to glow with an unnatural luminescence. Panic flared within her. She fumbled with the pepper spray, her fingers clumsy and unresponsive. The figure took a step forward, and the floorboard creaked loudly in the silence. Amelia turned and ran, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't know who or what that was, but every instinct screamed at her to get away. She sprinted down the hallway, the sound of her own footsteps echoing around her. She glanced back, but the figure was gone, but the feeling of being watched remained. A cold, prickling sensation on the back of her neck. The humming grew louder, almost deafening now, and the air seemed to vibrate around her. She could hear other sounds now, too, faint whispers, the dragging of something heavy, the soft rustling of movement just out of sight. She stumbled down the stairs, her ankles twisting on loose debris. She burst out of the main entrance, gasping for breath. The humid night air, a welcome relief after the oppressive atmosphere inside. But as she stood there, her heart still pounding, she realized she wasn't truly free. The whispers followed her, carried on the night breeze. The feeling of being watched intensified, as if unseen eyes were boring into her back. She started to walk, then jogged, then ran down the overgrown path, away from the skeletal remains of the Magnolia Bloom Sanatorium. She didn't look back. She didn't want to see what might be following them. Days turned into weeks. Amelia tried to piece together what she had experienced, but the rational part of her mind struggled to reconcile what she had seen with reality. She listened to the audio recordings she had made, but there was nothing unusual, just the sounds of the crumbling building, and her own footsteps. Then, one evening, while reviewing her notes, she noticed something, a faint, almost subliminal sound in the background of one of her recordings, taken in the operating theater. A low, rhythmic chanting. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination. But the more she listened, the clearer it became. A chorus of voices, whispering words she couldn't quite make out, weaving a tapestry of sound that sent a chill down her spine. She researched the history of the sanatorium again, digging deeper, looking for any clues she might have missed. She found an old newspaper article, tucked away in the archives, mentioning a local legend about a cult that had practiced strange rituals in the area, long before the sanatorium was built. Rituals involving stars. The chanting on the recording, when slowed down and amplified, began to resolve into recognizable, albeit disturbing, phrases. Phrases about celestial bodies, about ancient entities, about the opening of a gateway. Amelia started having nightmares of elongated figures with glowing eyes, of endless hallways that twisted and turned, of a humming that resonated deep within her soul. She started seeing things out of the corner of her eye, fleeting shadows that vanished when she turned her head. One night, she woke up to find a single magnolia blossom on her bedside table. Its white petals were pristine, but a dark, viscous liquid dripped from its center, staining the white fabric of her sheets. The scent was cloying, sickeningly sweet, with that faint metallic undertone she had smelled at the sanatorium. She tried to throw it away, but every time she did, another blossom would appear. On her pillow, in her shoes, tucked into the pages of her books. Each one brought with it a wave of nausea and a deepening sense of dread. Then came the whispers, not on her recordings, but in her own ears. Faint at first, like the rustling of leaves. Then clearer, more insistent. Whispers of her name, spoken in voices that seemed to come from all around her, yet nowhere specific. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that she hadn't just stumbled upon a forgotten tragedy. She had awakened something that had been lying dormant within the decaying walls of the Magnolia Bloom Sanatorium, waiting, and now it was reaching out. The last entry in Amelia's notebook is a single scrawled sentence. The stars know, and now they are calling. The humming has become a constant presence in her life, a physical vibration that never ceases. The whispers are louder now. No longer just her name, but promises, invitations. And sometimes, when she looks in the mirror, she sees a fleeting glimpse of something behind her eyes. Something pale and elongated, with a faint, unnatural glow. She knows she won't be writing any more stories. Story 15. In the heart of the city, where shadows lurk and secrets lie hidden, a tale of terror unfolds. I, a mere witness to the horrors that plague this place, am about to share a chilling account of the night my life changed forever. It began on a dark and stormy evening, as I made my way through the deserted streets, a sense of unease creeping over me. The rain poured relentlessly, blurring the city's grim reality. I sought refuge in an old, abandoned building, its once grand facade now crumbling and decayed. As I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the patter of raindrops on the roof. I called out, my voice echoing through the empty halls. Is anyone here? Hello? Suddenly, a faint whisper responded. Who dares disturb our slumber? I froze, my heart pounding. The voice, though soft, carried an otherworldly presence. I'm sorry, I stuttered, my voice trembling. I just needed shelter from the storm. Shelter, the voice cackled. You have chosen a most unwise place for refuge, mortal. This building is not meant for the living. Fear gripped me. But I found the courage to ask, who are you? What is this place? The figure stepped forward, its form shrouded in darkness. I am the guardian of this realm, the keeper of forgotten souls. This building is a gateway, a place where the living and the dead coexist. My eyes adjusted to the gloom, revealing a figure with pale skin and eyes like burning embers. You must leave, it hissed. This place is not for you. I can't, I pleaded. The storm won't let me go. The guardian's eyes narrowed. Then you shall witness the horrors that dwell within these walls. Prepare yourself, for the night is young, and the dead walk among us, as if on cue. The lights flickered, casting an eerie glow on the decaying surroundings. I could hear whispers, faint at first, then growing louder. Who are you? I whispered, my voice barely audible. We are the forgotten, the chorus of voices replied. The ones who were never meant to be remembered. We haunt these halls, forever bound to this place. I felt a chill as the air grew colder, and a sense of despair filled the room. Why are you here? I asked, my curiosity overcoming my fear. We are the victims of a cruel fate, one voice replied, murdered, forgotten, and left to wander. Our souls are trapped, forever seeking justice. The guardian's eyes flashed with anger. They are the victims of a city's dark secrets, a place where evil thrives. Their stories must be told, their suffering acknowledged, or else they shall never find peace. I stood there, transfixed, as the spirits shared their tragic tales. Stories of love and loss, betrayal and murder, each more chilling than the last. Their voices, once soft, now grew louder, filling the air with an unearthly chorus. Why do you tell me this? I asked, my voice filled with a mix of horror and compassion. You, mortal, have a choice, the guardian said. You, mortal, have a choice, the guardian said. You can bear witness to our plight and carry our stories beyond these walls. Or you can turn away and let us be forgotten once more. I knew then that I had a purpose, a mission to give these forgotten souls a voice. I will tell your stories, I vowed. I will ensure that your suffering is not in vain. The guardian's eyes softened, and a faint smile appeared on its face. Then you have a chance to make a difference. Spread the word, mortal. Let the living know of the horrors that lurk in the shadows. As the night wore on, the storm raged outside, and the spirits' tales continued to unfold. I listened, captivated, as their stories became a part of me. When the first rays of dawn pierced the sky, the spirits began to fade. Thank you, they whispered, their voices fading with the night. Your courage has given us hope. The guardian appeared before me once more, its eyes filled with a sense of peace. Your journey has only begun, mortal. The city holds many secrets, and more horrors await. Be brave, and remember, some stories must be told. With that, the guardian vanished, leaving me alone in the now silent building. I stepped out into the morning light, a changed person, forever marked by the horrors I had witnessed. As I made my way through the city, I knew my life would never be the same. The weight of the spirits' tales rested on my shoulders, a burden I was determined to carry. I would tell their stories, ensure their memories lived on, and perhaps, just perhaps, bring justice to the forgotten souls of this haunted city. The end of this tale marks the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with mystery and the promise of more chilling revelations. Stay vigilant, for the shadows of this city hold many secrets yet to be uncovered. Story 16. In the quaint town of Rosedale, nestled amongst the verdant hills and meandering streams, stood a building of great renown and intrigue. The structure, a stately edifice of once resplendent beauty, had fallen into disrepair over the years, earning it the ominous moniker, the Whispering Willows. The Willows, as locals respectfully referred to it, bore an enigmatic past, constructed in the late 1800s by the town's founding family, the Hargroves. It had served as their ancestral home for generations. Rumors of clandestine activities and occult practices had long swirled around the property, creating an aura of mystery that permeated the crumbling walls and decaying foundations. A young couple, Amelia and Gabriel, recently relocated to Rosedale, sought to breathe new life into the forlorn abode. Amelia, a talented interior designer, and Gabriel, a historian with a passion for restoring architectural treasures, were undeterred by the whispered tales of the past. They perceived the Willows not as a foreboding dwelling, but as a labor of love, a project that would allow them to weave their own story into the rich tapestry of the building's history. As Amelia and Gabriel embarked on their journey of renovation, they were meticulous in their efforts to respect and preserve the original features of the building. They scoured antique shops, estate sales, and the depths of the internet, amassing a collection of period-appropriate furnishings and fixtures that would restore the Willows to its former grandeur. However, as the weeks turned to months, the couple began to notice peculiar occurrences within the house. Shadows flitted just beyond the corner of their eyes. Whispers seemed to echo through empty hallways, and objects inexplicably shifted from their meticulously organized positions. These strange happenings intensified as the transformation of the Willows neared completion, culminating in a single, chilling event. One fateful evening, Amelia and Gabriel stood in the expansive foyer, basking in the warm glow of the chandelier they had so painstakingly restored. The walls, once marred by the ravages of time, now bore the rich, vibrant hues of their original wallpaper. The intricate woodwork gleamed beneath a fresh coat of polish, and the scent of beeswax and old books permeated the air. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The chandelier, the centerpiece of their pride, had extinguished itself, casting an eerie pall over the space. A faint, ghostly melody, reminiscent of a music box, tinkled through the air. The sound seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. Frozen in place, Amelia and Gabriel could only watch in horror as a series of ethereal images materialized before them. A young woman, her hair an unnatural shade of raven black, danced gracefully through the dimly lit room. Orbs of light, pulsing with otherworldly energy, swirled around her like celestial ballerinas. The spectral figure appeared to be unaware of the mortal witnesses, her gaze transfixed on a tall, dark-haired man standing near the base of the grand staircase. The gentleman, adorned in finery from another era, extended his hand to the woman, inviting her to dance. The pair waltzed across the marbled floor, their movements fluid and harmonious, as though they had danced together 1,000 times before. Amelia, unable to contain her curiosity, reached out to touch the spectral woman. Her fingers passed through the apparition as though it were made of mist, eliciting a mournful cry from the ethereal figure. The music ceased abruptly, and the room plunged into darkness once more. When light returned to the foyer, the spectral dancers had vanished, leaving Amelia and Gabriel to ponder the haunting scene they had just witnessed. The couple resolved to uncover the truth behind the Whispering Willows and the melancholic spirits residing within its walls. Gabriel, armed with his extensive knowledge of local history, began to delve into the building's past. He discovered that the Hargrove family, once the pillars of Rosedale's community, had been beset by tragedy. The family's youngest daughter, Evelyn, had fallen in love with a man of ill repute, a gambler and a charlatan who had wheedled his way into her heart. The Hargroves, staunch in their convictions and desperate to protect their daughter, had forbidden the union. The lovers, undeterred, had devised a plan to elope, However, their clandestine rendezvous had been discovered, and a terrible confrontation had ensued. The young man, in a fit of rage, had attacked Evelyn's father, leaving him mortally wounded. In the ensuing chaos, Evelyn had attempted to shield her lover from the wrath of her family. The couple had fled, leaving the Hargroves to mourn their fallen patriarch. The lovers had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and unanswered questions. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Amelia and Gabriel sought to bring peace to the restless spirits haunting the Whispering Willows. They began to research the legend of the lovers, piecing together the fragments of their shattered lives. Their investigation led them to a dusty, forgotten cemetery on the outskirts of Rosedale, where the couple believed they would find the final resting place of Evelyn and her lover. Beneath an ancient, gnarled willow tree, they discovered a pair of matching, unmarked gravestones. The stones bore no inscription, no testament to the lives that had been lost. Amelia and Gabriel, moved by the tragic tale and the desolation of the unkempt graves, resolved to honor the memory of the doomed lovers. Back at the Willows, the couple lovingly crafted a memorial to Evelyn and her lover, a tribute to the enduring power of love in the face of adversity. They placed the memorial within a glass-enclosed case, positioning it in the very spot where they had first witnessed the spectral dance. As Amelia and Gabriel completed their labor of love, the atmosphere within the Whispering Willows seemed to shift. The shadows retreated, the whispers faded, and a palpable sense of peace washed over the once foreboding abode. That night, as Amelia and Gabriel slept within the walls of the transformed Whispering Willows, they dreamt of the spectral dancers, their forms no longer shrouded in melancholy. Instead, the couple saw Evelyn and her lover waltzing gracefully through the halls, their movements illuminated by the warm, gentle glow of the chandelier. When Amelia and Gabriel awoke the following morning, they found the house bathed in the golden light of dawn, the remnants of their haunting past seemingly vanished. From that day forth, the Whispering Willows stood as a testament to the transformative power of love, respect, and understanding, its walls echoing with the harmonious whispers of a hopeful future. Story 17. I step into the asylum, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. The air is thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the faint creaking of floorboards and the distant echo of my footsteps. As I venture further, the weight of the place's dark history bears down on me. Yes, Dostan. Welcome to your worst nightmare, a voice whispers from the shadows. I spin around, my breath catching in my throat. A figure emerges, shrouded in a long black cloak. I've been expecting you, brave adventurer. You seek the truth, don't you? The secrets this place holds? Who are you? I ask, my voice trembling. The figure chuckles, a chilling sound that sends shivers down my spine. Call me the Guardian. I've watched over this asylum for decades, bearing witness to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. And now, I shall guide you through the darkest chapters of its past. The asylum's once grand architecture is now marred by decay and neglect. Peeling paint, broken windows, and the faint scent of mildew greet us at every turn. This place was once a beacon of hope, the Guardian explains. A sanctuary for the mentally ill, offering treatment and care. But over time, it became a prison, a place of torment and experimentation. We pass by a solitary cell, its door ajar. Inside, I catch a glimpse of a withered, desiccated body, still wearing the tattered remains of a patient's uniform. A shudder runs through me as I imagine the suffering this person endured. They called it the quiet room, the Guardian continues. A place where patients were subjected to extreme isolation and sensory deprivation. Many never emerged from that darkness. As we continue our journey, the Guardian's voice takes on a more somber tone. Beyond this point, the asylum's true nature is revealed. Prepare yourself for what lies ahead. I steel myself, determined to uncover the asylum's darkest secrets. We enter a vast chamber, its walls lined with ancient medical equipment and instruments of torture. The air is heavy with the stench of decay and despair. This was the heart of the asylum's operations, the Guardian says, his voice laced with sorrow. Here, doctors and scientists conducted experiments, pushing the boundaries of ethics and humanity. I approach a rusted operating table, its surface stained with what I can only assume is blood. Nearby, a collection of surgical tools lies in disarray, each one a testament to the pain and suffering inflicted upon the patients. They called it progress, the Guardian whispers. But at what cost? The lives and sanity of those trapped within these walls. As I explore further, I discover a hidden basement, its entrance concealed by a false panel. Descending the stairs, I find myself in a chamber of horrors. The air is thick with the smell of death, and the floor is littered with skeletal remains. This is where they disposed of the failed experiments. The Guardian explains. The Guardian explains. Patients who didn't conform to their standards, or those who simply couldn't bear the torment any longer. I kneel down, my fingers brushing against a pile of bones. A wave of emotion washes over me, a mix of anger and sorrow for the innocent lives lost. Their voices still echo in these halls, the Guardian says, his voice breaking. The screams, the pleas for mercy. They haunt me to this day. I stand up, my resolve strengthening. We can't let their stories be forgotten. We must expose the truth and ensure justice is served. The Guardian nods, his eyes glistening with determination. Together we shall bring light to this darkness. Their voices will be heard, and their suffering will not be in vain. As we emerge from the asylum, the sun begins to set, casting an orange hue over the surrounding landscape. I take a deep breath, feeling a sense of purpose and resolve. The journey ahead will be challenging, the Guardian says, placing a hand on my shoulder. But with courage and determination, we can expose the horrors of this place and bring peace to those who suffer. I nod, my heart filled with a newfound strength. Together we step forward, ready to face the world and share the asylum's dark secrets, ensuring that history does not repeat itself. Story 18. The biting wind whipped off the slate-gray sea, clawing at the exposed skin of Amelia's cheeks. She pulled her thick wool scarf higher, the scent of salt and approaching rain heavy in the air. The lighthouse, her destination, stood silhouetted against the turbulent sky, a solitary finger pointing accusingly at the heavens. It wasn't the lighthouse itself that drew her, not anymore. It was the island it stood upon, a craggy, windswept outcrop called Widow's Tooth, shunned by locals and whispered about in hushed tones in the mainland pubs. 5 years ago, her brother Ben, a seasoned marine biologist, had disappeared without a trace while conducting research on the island. The official report cited a rogue wave, a tragic accident. Amelia, however, carried a different weight in her heart, a cold, gnawing certainty that something more sinister had claimed him. She dismissed the local folklore initially, the tales of the weeper of the waves, a spectral figure sent to lure sailors to their doom with mournful cries. But the longer Ben remained missing, the more those stories burrowed into her mind, fueled by a desperate need for an explanation. Any explanation. Now, clutching a battered map Ben had drawn of the island, she was back, determined to uncover the truth, however unsettling it might be. The small ferry bobbed precariously as it approached the rocky shore. The ferryman, the grizzled man with eyes like faded denim, refused to set foot on the island. Been no reason to go there since the incident, he muttered, his gaze fixed on the churning water. He helped her unload her backpack, his touch surprisingly gentle, then shoved off, leaving her alone with the wind and the whispers of the sea. The island was desolate. Tussocks of tough grass clung to the uneven ground, offering meager resistance to the relentless wind. Skeletal trees, twisted by the elements, clawed at the sky like tormented souls. There was a profound silence, broken only by the crashing waves and the cries of gulls overhead. A silence that felt thick and oppressive, like a physical presence. Following Ben's map, Amelia navigated the treacherous terrain. He had marked several points of interest, unique rock formations, tide pools teeming with life, and, crucially, a network of sea caves that honeycombed the island's base. It was the caves that drew her with a morbid fascination and a knot of fear in her stomach. Ben had been particularly interested in them, noting unusual acoustic properties and citing old legends of smugglers' tunnels. She found the entrance to the largest cave tucked behind a cluster of jagged rocks, partially concealed by a curtain of seaweed. The air inside was instantly colder, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly acrid. As her eyes adjusted to the gloom, she could make out the rough-hewn walls, slick with moisture. The sound of dripping water echoed eerily. Deeper inside, the cave opened into a larger chamber. A beam of light from the entrance barely penetrated the darkness, leaving the far corners shrouded in shadow. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. She pulled out her flashlight, its beam cutting a shaky path through the gloom. She found markings on the walls, crude symbols etched into the rock, circles, spirals, and figures that seemed vaguely human, but disturbingly distorted. Ben hadn't mentioned these in his notes. A shiver ran down her spine. This was beyond scientific observation. This felt ritualistic. Then she heard it. A faint sound carried on the damp air. A low, mournful hum, almost like a sob. The sound seemed to emanate from the depths of the cave, drawing her further in. The weeper of the waves. The old wives' tale resurfaced in her mind. No longer a dismissible fantasy, but a chilling possibility. She moved cautiously, her flashlight beam dancing nervously across the uneven floor. She tripped over something, a smooth, round object. Picking it up, she saw it was a stone, meticulously carved with the same unsettling symbols as the cave walls. The humming grew louder, closer. There was a sound that seemed to vibrate in her bones, filling her with an unbearable sadness, a sense of profound loss. Tears pricked her eyes despite herself. It wasn't just a sound. It was an emotion, a raw, visceral pain. She rounded a bend in the cave and froze. In a small alcove, a figure huddled on the ground. It was vaguely human in shape, draped in what looked like seaweed and tattered cloth. Its back was to her, but the humming, the weeping seemed to be coming from it. "Ben," she whispered, her voice trembling. Hope, fragile and desperate, flickered within her. The figure slowly turned. Amelia gasped, stumbling backward. It wasn't Ben. The face that turned towards her was gaunt and pale, its features stretched and distorted. Its eyes were wide and vacant, reflecting the beam of her flashlight like a predator's in the night. And from its open mouth came not a human sob, but a low, guttural moan that resonated deep within her chest. A sound that spoke of ancient sorrow and something far more sinister. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped Amelia. She wanted to scream, but her throat was constricted. The figure began to move, crawling slowly towards her, its limbs unnaturally long and thin. The carved stones she had seen on the walls were embedded in its flesh, like grotesque jewelry. She scrambled back, tripping over the uneven ground. The moan intensified, filling the cave, pressing against her eardrums. She could smell it now, a cloying, sweet odor, like rotting seaweed and something metallic. The smell she had noticed earlier, amplified and sickeningly potent. She fumbled in her backpack, her fingers closing around the small, heavy flashlight. It was her only weapon. As the creature drew closer, its skeletal fingers reaching out, she swung the flashlight with all her might, hitting it squarely on the side of the head. The creature recoiled with a screech that ripped through the silence of the cave. It stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. Amelia didn't hesitate. She turned and ran, scrambling back through the narrow passageway, the creature's moans echoing behind her. She burst out of the cave entrance, gasping for breath, the wind whipping at her face like a physical blow. She didn't stop running, her lungs burning, her legs aching. She had to get off the island. She reached the shore, her heart pounding in her ears. The ferry was long gone. The tide was coming in, the waves crashing against the rocks with increasing fury. Looking back at the island, she saw the silhouette of the lighthouse against the darkening sky. And then, at the mouth of the cave, a dark figure stood, its form indistinct in the fading light, but the mournful hum carried on the wind, a chilling reminder of what lurked within. Amelia knew then that Ben hadn't been swept away by a rogue wave. He had found something on Widow's Tooth, something ancient and malevolent. The Weeper of the Waves wasn't just a story. It was real, a creature twisted by the island's isolation and the sorrow it exuded. She spent a terrifying night huddled amongst the rocks, the creature's moans echoing across the water. When the ferry finally returned the next morning, the ferryman's face was etched with concern. He didn't ask what had happened, but he saw the terror in her eyes. Amelia never went back to Widow's Tooth. The memories of the cave, the carvings, the creature's vacant eyes, haunted her nightmares. She never learned what happened to Ben, but she knew, with chilling certainty, that the island held a secret it would never willingly relinquish. And sometimes, on stormy nights, when the wind howled off the sea, she could almost hear the mournful weeping, a sound that chilled her to the bone, a reminder of the horror that lurked on the desolate island, waiting for its next victim. Story 19. Deep within the eerie, mist-shrouded mountains of Transylvania, where shadows dance with secrets and legends come to life, I found myself drawn to a tale that would forever haunt my dreams. It began on a moonless night, as I ventured into the ancient ruins of Castle Bran, a place shrouded in an air of foreboding mystery. "Welcome, traveler." A voice echoed through the stone corridors, sending shivers down my spine. I turned, my heart pounding, to face a figure cloaked in darkness. "You seek the truth, do you not?" I nodded, my curiosity piqued, despite the fear that gripped me. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face etched with age and wisdom. "I am the guardian of this place, a witness to the horrors that unfolded within these walls. But you, my friend, you are different. You possess a strength of spirit that few others have." Intrigued, I took a step closer. "What horrors? What do you know that I must uncover?" "The castle holds a dark secret, one that has plagued these lands for centuries. A curse, if you will, a curse that feeds on fear and despair." "A curse? Tell me more," I urged, my voice trembling. "Long ago, a powerful vampire, known as Count Dracula, made this castle his lair. He fed on the blood of the innocent, turning them into his minions, but Dracula's thirst for power knew no bounds. He sought to control not only the living, but also the very essence of death itself. Dracula discovered a way to manipulate the boundary between life and death, blurring the lines that separate the living from the undead. He created a realm where souls were trapped, forever wandering in an eternal night. How is that possible?" I asked, my voice filled with awe and horror. It is a power beyond comprehension, the power that grants him eternal life and an army of the damned. But there's a way to break the curse, to free the souls and restore balance. Tell me, please. I must know how to stop this evil. The guardian's eyes gleamed with determination. The key lies within the heart of the castle, hidden deep within the vampire's chambers. It is a sacred artifact, a relic that can sever the ties that bind the souls to this realm. But beware, for Dracula will not yield his power easily. He has guardians of his own, creatures of the night that will stop at nothing to protect his domain. I am ready to face them. I must put an end to this curse. With a solemn nod, the guardian revealed a map, its ancient parchment illuminated by the flickering torchlight. Here is the path to the vampire's chambers. Follow it with caution, for the journey is fraught with danger. Remember, the power of the artifact lies not only in its physical form, but also in the strength of your own beliefs. Believe in the possibility of redemption, and you shall find the key to unlocking the curse. Taking the map, I ventured deeper into the castle, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The corridors echoed with the whispers of the damned, their souls crying out for liberation. I encountered creatures of the night, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. But I pressed on, driven by the guardian's words and the weight of my mission. As I reached the vampire's chambers, the air grew heavier, and a sense of impending doom settled upon me. The door, carved with ancient runes, stood before me, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly energy. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, my hand reaching for the cold metal handle. "You dare to challenge me, mortal?" a voice hissed, sending a chill down my spine. I turned to face a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes burning with an unearthly fire. It was Count Dracula, the master of shadows and eternal night. "I come to put an end to your reign of terror," I declared, my voice steadied despite the fear that threatened to consume me. "The souls of the innocent cry out for justice, and I am here to deliver it." Dracula laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can defeat me, little mortal? I have walked the earth for centuries, feeding on the life force of the living. My power is beyond your comprehension." "My power is beyond your comprehension." "Perhaps," I replied, my gaze unwavering. "But I carry with me the hope of redemption, a belief in the possibility of breaking the curse. And with that, I am stronger than you could ever imagine." Dracula's eyes narrowed, and a sinister smile curled his lips. "Very well, mortal. See if your belief can withstand the test of my power. For if you fail, your soul shall join the endless night, and your name will be forgotten." With a swift movement, he lunged forward, his fangs glinting in the dim light. I dodged, my heart racing, as I realized the true extent of the challenge that lay ahead. The battle that ensued was fierce, a dance of shadows and steel, as I fought to protect the sacred artifact and break the curse that plagued these lands. In a moment of sheer determination, I managed to land a blow, striking Dracula with an ancient sword infused with the power of light. The impact sent a shockwave through the castle, and a blinding light filled the chamber. When the light faded, I found myself standing alone, the air heavy with silence. Cautiously, I approached the spot where Dracula had stood, my heart pounding with anticipation. And there, amidst the shattered remains of his power, I discovered the sacred artifact, its surface glowing with a soft, otherworldly radiance. With trembling hands, I held the relic close, feeling its energy course through my veins. "It is done," I whispered, my voice filled with a sense of accomplishment and relief. The curse is broken, and the souls are free. As I turned to leave, a sense of peace washed over me. The castle, once a place of terror, now held a different kind of energy, one of hope and redemption. I knew that my journey had not been in vain, and that the legends of Transylvania would forever be changed. With a final glance at the ancient ruins, I ventured back into the world, carrying with me the knowledge that even in the darkest of places, there exists the potential for light and salvation. Her fear was more specific, more intimate. It lived in the periphery, in the rustle of leaves that sounded too deliberate, in the elongated shadows that seemed to writhe independently. Tonight, that fear felt particularly sharp, a cold prickle on the back of her neck. She'd been working late again, immersed in the intricate web of code that was her sanctuary and her prison. The deadlines were relentless, the pressure a constant hum beneath her skin. The walk home was usually a welcome decompression, a chance to shed the digital skin and breathe in the real world. But lately the real world felt off. It started subtly, the fleeting glimpse of a figure in a window across the street, gone the moment she focused. A voice, just a whisper, that seemed to slither from the shadows, too indistinct to understand, yet undeniably present. She dismissed it as stress, as an overactive imagination fueled by too much caffeine and too little sleep. But the occurrences amplified. The other day it was a child's toy, a brightly colored plastic dinosaur left on her doorstep. Odd, given that she lived alone, and the nearest family, with children, lived several houses down. Then there were the knocks on her door in the dead of night. Soft, insistent taps that ceased the moment she reached the peephole. Tonight, the air crackled with a different kind of tension. The usual sounds of the city, distant sirens, the rumble of a late bus, were muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The leaves on the trees lining the street seemed to hang heavy, their shadows stretching long and distorted under the sodium glow of the streetlights. As she neared her apartment building, a 3-story brick structure with a fire escape that looked perpetually on the verge of collapse, she noticed something different. A light was on in the window of the abandoned storefront at the end of the block. The storefront had been vacant for years, its windows dusty and scrawled with faded graffiti. She'd never seen a light on there before. Curiosity warred with a sudden surge of unease. Logic told her it was probably just someone squatting, seeking shelter from the cold. But the way the light flickered, an erratic, almost organic pulse, sent a shiver down her spine. She quickened her pace, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. She told herself to ignore it, to focus on the warmth of her apartment, the comfort of her worn armchair, but her gaze kept drifting back to the storefront. As she reached the entrance to her building, she couldn't resist one last glance. The light was still on, pulsating with that strange, unsettling rhythm. And then she saw it. A shadow moved behind the grimy window, a tall, gaunt silhouette that seemed to stretch and distort in impossible ways. It wasn't a human shape. It was too elongated, too angular, the limbs too thin and impossibly extended. Fear, raw and primal, gripped her. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so violently, she almost dropped them. She jammed the key into the lock, her heart hammering against her ribs. She pushed the heavy door open, slipping inside and slamming it shut behind her, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Safe inside the dimly lit hallway, she leaned against the door, her eyes fixed on the grimy glass panel. She waited, listening for any sound from outside. Silence. Only the low hum of the building's ancient heating system filled the air. She told herself it was her imagination, a trick of the light, the exhaustion finally catching up to her. But the image of that distorted silhouette was burned into her mind. She crept up the stairs to her second-floor apartment, her footsteps muffled by the worn carpet. She double-locked her door, then bolted the chain. She felt a pang of self-consciousness for her overreaction, but the unease lingered. the cold knot in her stomach, trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. She made herself a cup of tea, the clinking of the mug against the kettle sounding deafeningly loud in the quiet apartment. She tried to distract herself with her phone, scrolling mindlessly through social media, but the image of the shadow kept intruding, pushing aside the mundane distractions. Suddenly, a soft tapping came from her window. Her blood ran cold. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. It couldn't be. She lived on the second floor. There was no fire escape on this side of the building. The tapping came again. A delicate, almost hesitant sound. She edged towards the window, her heart pounding. Peeking cautiously through the gap in her curtains, she saw nothing. Just the empty street below. The flickering streetlight casting long shadows. She told herself it was the wind, a branch tapping against the glass. But the air was still, the leaves on the trees outside motionless. The tapping came again, more insistent this time. It wasn't the sound of something hitting the glass. It sounded like fingers. Panic clawed at her throat. She backed away from the window, her eyes darting around the small apartment, searching for a weapon or escape. There was nowhere to go. The tapping turned into a scraping sound, as if something was dragging itself against the glass. She pressed herself against the wall, her breath shallow and rapid. Then a whisper, faint but distinct, drifted through the glass. Her name, Maya. It wasn't a voice she recognized, but it felt intimately familiar, like a forgotten memory surfacing from the depths of her mind. It was low and raspy, tinged with an unsettling sweetness. She clamped her hands over her mouth, stifling a scream. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing it to stop, to go away. The scraping continued, joined by another sound, a soft, wet slithering. She could smell something now, a cloying, sickly sweet odor that made her stomach churn. She opened her eyes a crack. Through the gap in the curtains, she saw it, pressed against the window pane. Its face inches from the glass was the creature from the storefront. Its features were vaguely human, but distorted, stretched and pulled into grotesque angles. Its skin was pale and translucent, the veins beneath visible like blue threads. Its eyes were large and black, devoid of pupils, reflecting the streetlights like pools of oil, and its mouth was wide and filled with rows upon rows of needle-sharp teeth. It smiled, a slow, deliberate stretch of its grotesque lips, and whispered her name again. Maya. They've been waiting for you. She stumbled backwards, knocking over a lamp, the crash loud in the suffocating silence. She scrambled away from the window, her mind racing. She had to get out. She ran to the door, fumbling with the locks and the chain, her fingers clumsy with fear. The scraping at the window intensified, a frantic, desperate sound. Finally, the chain snapped free. She threw the door open and bolted into the hallway, not knowing where she was going, only knowing she had to get away. She could hear it behind her, a soft padding sound, too light to be human. She didn't dare look back. She raced down the stairs, her bare feet slapping against the wood. She burst out of the building and onto the street, her lungs burning, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. She didn't know where to go, who to turn to. She just ran, blindly, desperately, away from the building, away from the thing that was hunting her. The streetlights hummed a lonely tune, but now Maya heard something else. A chorus of whispers carried on the cold night air, 1,000 voices murmuring her name. She wasn't running from a shadow in a window anymore. She was running from something that had been waiting, watching, patiently weaving its way into her reality. And as she ran, she knew, with a chilling certainty, that it would find her. It always found its way. Story 21. The rhythmic thump was the first thing Kai noticed. not the frantic adrenaline-fueled drumming of his own heart, but a deeper, more resonant pulse that seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards beneath his worn boots. He'd been so focused on the inky darkness clinging to the edges of the overgrown path that the sound had initially escaped his notice. He wasn't in an old house. Not exactly. It was an observatory, perched precariously on the highest peak of the Whispering Hills, its white dome a ghostly silhouette against the perpetually overcast sky. Locals whispered stories about the place, not of ghosts or ghouls, but of something colder, something stranger. Tales of celestial whispers and of stars that moved in ways they shouldn't. Kai, a self-proclaimed urban explorer with a penchant for the forgotten, found the stories intriguing, a refreshing change from the usual haunted mansion fare. He'd had to hike for hours, the air growing thinner and colder with each upward step. Now, standing before the observatory's heavy, metallic door, a sense of unease prickled his skin. The rhythmic thump continued, a slow, deliberate beat that seemed to synchronize with the pounding in his chest. It wasn't the wind. It was too regular, too intentional. The door, thankfully, wasn't locked. A rusty groan echoed as he pushed it open, revealing a circular foyer. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the grimy windows high above. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of ozone, and something else, something faintly metallic and vaguely unsettling. The rhythmic thump was louder here, undeniably coming from deeper within the structure. He pulled out his flashlight, its beam cutting a swathe through the gloom. The foyer was Spartan. Bare concrete walls, a faded schematic of the solar system tacked haphazardly to one side, and 3 identical, unmarked doorways leading further in. Which way to go? Kai chose the door directly opposite the entrance, a hunch guided by the sheer weight of the rhythmic thumping emanating from that direction. This led to a narrow corridor, lined with what were once probably offices or laboratories. Peeling paint hung from the walls, like decaying skin, and overturned cabinets lay scattered across the floor, their contents spilled and forgotten. The silence here was broken only by his own breathing and the insistent thump. Thump, thump. He peered into one of the rooms. Empty desks, shattered glass, and scribbled notes on yellowed paper lay scattered about. The notes were filled with complex astronomical equations and diagrams, some with strange, almost alien symbols interwoven amongst the familiar characters. One page, partially obscured by a fallen book, caught his eye. It was a hand-drawn illustration of a constellation, unlike any he'd ever seen. A swirling mass of stars with an unnervingly organic feel. Beneath it, a single word was scrawled in shaky handwriting. Awakening. A shiver ran down Kai's spine. The stories about the observatory suddenly felt less like folklore and more like a warning. He moved on, the rhythmic thumping growing stronger with each step. The corridor ended abruptly at a heavy steel door, its surface marred by deep scratches that looked disturbingly like claw marks. A small circular window was set into the door, and Kai cautiously peered through it. The sight that greeted him made his breath catch in his throat. It was the main observation room, dominated by a massive, antiquated telescope that stretched towards the domed ceiling. But it wasn't the telescope that held his attention. In the center of the room, suspended from the ceiling by thick chains, was a large metallic sphere. It pulsed with a faint, internal light, and with each pulse, it emitted that rhythmic thump. Kai cautiously pushed open the steel door. The air in this room crackled with an almost tangible energy. The metallic scent was overpowering here, mixed with a faint, sweet odor that made his stomach churn. He circled the sphere, its smooth surface reflecting his own distorted image back at him. There were no visible seams or openings, just a seamless, pulsating orb. He reached out a hesitant hand his fingers hovering just above the cool metal. As he did, the pulsing intensified, the rhythmic thump growing faster, more urgent. The internal light flared, casting eerie shadows across the room. A low hum, almost subsonic, vibrated through the floor and up into his bones. Suddenly, a series of clicks and whirs echoed from the telescope. It began to move, its massive lens rotating slowly, deliberately. Kai watched in stunned silence as the telescope swung around, not towards the ceiling, but towards the floor, pointing directly at the pulsating sphere. A beam of energy, not light, but something darker, more substantive, erupted from the telescope's lens. It struck the sphere, and the room filled with a blinding flash of indigo light. Kai threw his arm up to shield his eyes, a strangled cry escaping his lips. When the light subsided, the sphere was glowing brighter, its pulsations more erratic. The humming was louder now, morphing into a deep, resonant drone that seemed to vibrate in his very skull. And then, something shifted. The metallic surface of the sphere began to ripple, as if something was moving beneath its skin. Bulges and protrusions formed, contorting the smooth surface into grotesque shapes. A crack appeared, then another, spider webbing across the sphere's surface. Kai stumbled back, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't a scientific instrument. It was something else entirely. Something alive. The cracks widened, and a viscous black fluid began to seep out, pooling on the floor. The rhythmic thumping had stopped, replaced by a low, guttural gurgling sound emanating from within the sphere. The cracks grew larger, and then, with a final, sickening tear, the sphere split open. What emerged was unlike anything Guy could have imagined. It wasn't an alien with tentacles or claws, not in the traditional sense. It was an amorphous mass of shimmering, iridescent energy, constantly shifting and reforming. Tendrils of light flickered from its core, reaching out into the air like curious fingers. Fear, cold and absolute, gripped Kai. He wanted to run, to scream, but his limbs felt like lead, his throat constricted. He was rooted to the spot, a rabbit caught in the headlights of an oncoming truck. The energy mass pulsed, and a series of complex geometric patterns flashed across its surface. These patterns weren't random. They were symbols, intricate and alien, the same symbols he'd seen in the scribbled notes. And as he stared at them, a terrifying understanding began to dawn. The observatory wasn't just observing the stars. It was listening. And the sphere wasn't just a machine. It was a receiver, an incubator. The stories weren't about celestial whispers. They were about celestial calls. The energy mass began to drift towards him, its tendrils of light reaching out, not with malice, but with an unnerving curiosity. As it drew closer, images flooded Kai's mind. Vast cosmic landscapes, swirling nebulae, and things older and stranger than the universe itself. He saw the birth and death of stars, the ebb and flow of galaxies, and felt a connection to something impossibly vast and ancient. But mixed with the awe was a chilling sense of insignificance. He was a speck of dust in the face of cosmic immensity, and this thing was a messenger, a herald of something incomprehensible. The tendrils of light touched him, and a jolt of pure energy surged through his body. His senses overloaded. He felt his consciousness expanding, stretching beyond the confines of his physical form, reaching out into the cosmos. He saw the observatory, the mountain, the world, shrinking into insignificance. He understood. The awakening wasn't about the thing in the sphere. It was about him. The observatory wasn't just listening. It was transmitting, and he was the antenna. His mind, his thoughts, his very being were being broadcast into the void, A signal flare in the cosmic darkness, and as his consciousness dissolved into the vastness, he heard it, not with his ears, but with his very being. A chorus of voices, ancient and immense, echoing from the depths of space, a welcoming committee for the newborn signal. The rhythmic thump was gone, replaced by a cosmic symphony, a song of stars and galaxies. Kai was gone too, his body slumped lifelessly on the floor, a vacant smile etched on his face. The observatory stood silent once more, its white dome bathed in the pale moonlight that had finally broken through the clouds, a beacon in the night, waiting for the next signal to be received, the next awakening to begin. And somewhere, in the infinite expanse of the cosmos, the invitation had been received, and the response had just begun. Story 22. The call came on a Tuesday, sharp and insistent, shattering the afternoon quiet. Alara, hunched over a half-finished manuscript, almost jumped out of her skin. She picked up the receiver, her heart thumping a nervous rhythm against her ribs. Alara Thorne. A voice crackled on the other end, dry and brittle like autumn leaves. Speaking. This is Constable Davies from Hollow Creek. Your aunt, Martha Thorne. The line went silent for a beat, and Alara's blood ran cold. Martha, her last living relative, a woman as eccentric as she was fiercely independent. They hadn't spoken in years, the chasm of unspoken hurt and bitter words separating them. Yet, the news, before it was even fully delivered, felt like a physical blow. She's gone, I'm afraid, Constable Davies continued, his voice softening slightly. Passed away peacefully in her sleep. Apparently, no signs of foul play. A hollow ache settled in Alara's chest. Peacefully? That didn't sound like the Martha she knew. A woman who spent her days railing against the injustices of the world, and her nights poring over arcane texts. There's a matter of her estate, the constable continued. Given you're the sole surviving relative, it falls to you. Alara hesitated. Martha's estate. She knew little about her aunt's life in Hollow Creek, a remote village nestled deep in the Blackwood Forest. The last time she'd visited, she was barely a teenager. The memory of the place a hazy mix of towering trees and the faint, unsettling scent of damp earth. Days later, Alara found herself driving down a winding road, the air growing colder and the trees pressing in on either side like watchful sentinels. Hollow Creek was exactly as she remembered. A cluster of stone cottages huddled together as if for protection against the encroaching woods. Martha's house was situated on the edge of the village, separated from the others by an overgrown garden and a wrought iron gate that groaned in protest as Alara pushed it open. It wasn't an old house in the traditional sense, more a sprawling Victorian villa, its once grand facade now weathered and stained with moss. The windows were dark and unblinking, giving it the air of a slumbering beast. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and something else, something acrid and faintly metallic. The silence was absolute, heavy, pressing down on Alara's ears. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the grime-coated windows, casting long, distorted shadows across the ornate furniture draped in white sheets. As she explored, a sense of unease began to settle in. Martha's life, evidenced by the books stacked high in every room, the strange artifacts arranged on shelves, was far more peculiar than Alara had ever imagined. Bound volumes with titles in forgotten languages, strange talismans carved from bone, jars filled with dried herbs she couldn't identify. It was a veritable museum of the esoteric. In the study, tucked away in a locked drawer, Alara found a journal. Its leather cover was worn smooth, the pages filled with Martha's spidery handwriting. As Alara read, a growing knot of fear tightened in her stomach. The early entries were mundane, chronicles of village lives, the changing seasons. Thus, as the years progressed, the entries became increasingly strange, filled with feverish accounts of unsettling dreams, whispers in the night, and a growing obsession with the surrounding forest. The woods are watching, one entry read, scrawled in frantic handwriting. I can feel their gaze, cold and hungry. Later entries spoke of rituals, of ancient powers slumbering beneath the earth, and of the need to appease them. Alara felt a chill crawl down her spine. This wasn't the aunt she remembered. One chilling passage detailed a specific location in the Blackwood Forest, a place Martha referred to as the Whispering Glade. She wrote of conducting rituals there, under the light of the full moon, offering sacrifices. The word hung heavy on the page, unspoken yet terrifyingly clear. That night, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows and clawing at the eaves of the house. Alara lay in bed. The journal's contents were playing in her mind, like a macabre film reel. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside her window sounded like a footstep, a whispered threat. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen and writhe, taking on shapes that were just beyond the edge of her vision. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the growing sense of dread. But the silence of the house was a canvas upon which her fears painted their grotesque masterpieces. Sleep was impossible, driven by a morbid curiosity and a growing sense of dread. Alara found herself drawn to the window. The moon, a sliver of silver in the inky sky, cast an eerie glow over the overgrown garden, bathing the twisted shapes of the shrubbery in an unnatural light. And that's when she saw it. Not a fleeting shadow or trick of the light. A figure, undeniably there, tall and gaunt, standing motionless beneath the skeletal branches of an ancient oak tree. It was too far away to discern any features, but its stillness, its absolute lack of movement, was profoundly unsettling. It stood as if carved from the very darkness, an absence in the moonlight. Alara held her breath, her heart pounding a frantic tattoo against her ribs. Then, slowly, deliberately, the figure turned its head, as if it knew she was watching. She felt a cold dread seep into her bones, primal fear that transcended logic. It was the wrongness of it, the unnatural stillness broken by that slow, deliberate turn. 2 pinpricks of light, like embers in the dark, shone from where its eyes should be. A wave of icy terror washed over Alara, paralyzing her. She stumbled back from the window, her breath catching in her throat, a strangled gasp escaping her lips. She fumbled for the bedside lamp, her shaking fingers finding the switch, flooding the room with a harsh, artificial light. But when she looked back, the figure was gone. The garden was empty, the moonlight casting long, innocuous shadows. Yet, the image of those glowing eyes remained, seared onto the back of her eyelids. The next day, despite her fear, she felt compelled to visit the Whispering Glade. The journal's entries had taken on a new urgency, a chilling clarity that demanded investigation. Armed with only a flashlight, its beam cutting a week's way through the gloom, and a growing sense of utter dread, she ventured into the Blackwood Forest. The trees were ancient and gnarled, their branches intertwined overhead, blocking out the sunlight, creating a perpetual twilight beneath their canopy. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, the silence broken only by the occasional snap of a twig underfoot and the distant, mournful sigh of the wind through the trees. Each shadow seemed to writhe and shift, playing tricks on her eyes, making her jump at phantom movements. Following the directions in Martha's journal, a series of cryptic landmarks and unsettlingly accurate descriptions of the forest's twisted topography, she eventually reached a clearing, the Whispering Glade. A circle of moss-covered stones stood in the center, their surfaces slick with moisture, arranged in a pattern that felt both ancient and disturbingly deliberate. The silence here was even more profound, an oppressive stillness that seemed to absorb all sound, broken only by the distant caw of a crow, a sound that echoed strangely in the otherwise silent glade. As Alara stepped into the clearing, a prickling sensation ran down her spine, a feeling of being watched, scrutinized. She saw something glinting in the undergrowth near one of the stones. She bent down and picked it up. It was a small silver locket, tarnished with age. She opened it. Inside were two tiny photographs, one of a young Martha, vibrant and smiling, her eyes full of life, and the other of Alara herself, as a child clutching a worn teddy bear. A pang of forgotten affection, mixed with a fresh surge of fear, twisted in her gut. What was this place? What secrets did it hold? What had Martha been involved in? Suddenly, the unnatural silence was shattered by a rustling in the trees. Close by, she spun around, her heart leaping into her throat, the flashlight beam dancing wildly. The figure from the garden stood at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by the shadows, yet somehow more distinct, more real than before. This time she could see it more clearly. Its skin was stretched taut over its bones, translucent in places, allowing glimpses of unnatural darkness beneath. Its eyes were hollow sockets, and yet those same eerie pinpricks of light glowed within them, fixing on her with an unnerving intensity. A faint, sickly, sweet odor, like rotting flowers, drifted towards her. It raised a hand, long and skeletal, the fingers unnaturally elongated, and beckoned her forward. Alara felt a primal terror grip her, a cold vise squeezing the air from her lungs, paralyzing her with its intensity. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but her legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot. Then a voice, weak but undeniably Martha's, whispered in her ear, so close it sent shivers down her spine. Don't come closer." The voice was laced with an unbearable sadness, a desperate plea. Alara gasped, whirling around, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness behind her. But there was no one there, only the ancient trees, their branches like skeletal arms reaching out. The figure in the clearing remained, unmoving, its glowing eyes fixed on her, a silent predator stalking its prey. The voice came again, closer this time, laced with a chilling distortion, the sweetness of it turning sour. "It's not me. It wears my skin." The words were like shards of ice, piercing the fog of her fear. Understanding dawned on Alara, cold and horrifying. Her aunt had simply passed away peacefully in her sleep. Something had taken her, something ancient and malevolent, that now inhabited her form, wore her semblance like a borrowed coat, and had lured her here with familiar grief and a desperate need for connection. The figure in the clearing took a deliberate step forward, the crunch of dry leaves under its feet echoing unnaturally loud in the silence. Alara finally found her voice, a ragged scream tearing through the silent woods, the sound of pure, unadulterated terror. She turned and ran, blindly, stumbling through the undergrowth. The image of those glowing eyes burned into her mind, the scent of decay clinging to the air behind her. She didn't know what the creature was, what unholy power resided in the whispering glade, what dark bargains Martha had made. But she knew one thing with chilling certainty. She had to escape. She had to leave Hollow Creek, to leave Martha's house, to leave this nightmare, and never look back. As she fled through the darkening forest, the branches tearing at her clothes, the thorns scratching her skin, she could hear it behind her, a rustling in the leaves that was too deliberate, too purposeful to be the wind, a soft, dragging sound that walked a soft, dragging sound that spoke of unnatural movement, and in the distance carried on the chilling evening breeze. A whisper. Closer now. a voice that sounded chillingly like her aunt's, calling her name, a lure disguised as solace. But Alara knew better. She ran faster. I found myself lost, far from any civilization, with only the dense canopy above and the mysterious whispers of the jungle for company. It was a place where the laws of nature seemed to bend, and the boundaries between life and death blurred. As I ventured further, the air grew thick with an eerie silence. The usual vibrant calls of the rainforest had fallen silent, replaced by an unnerving stillness. I could sense an ancient presence, a malevolent force that watched my every move. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer came, only the rustle of leaves, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I continued my journey, my heart pounding in my chest. The path ahead twisted and turned, leading me into a clearing unlike any other. Here, the trees formed a perfect circle, their branches reaching towards the sky like 1,000 arms ready to embrace an unseen entity. "This place, it's not right," I muttered, my words echoing in the empty space. Suddenly, a rustling sound startled me. I turned, my eyes scanning the undergrowth, but saw nothing. "Show yourself," I demanded, my voice breaking with fear. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form distorted and otherworldly. It stood tall, its skin pale white, almost translucent, as if the very light passed through it. Its eyes, black and empty, held 1,000 secrets I did not want to uncover. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure remained silent, its presence alone sending shivers down my spine. I took a step back, my instincts urging me to flee, but something compelled me to stay. "Why are you here?" I pressed, my curiosity getting the better of me. "I am the guardian of this realm," it replied, its voice like the distant howl of a wolf. "I protect the secrets that lie within." "Secrets?" I questioned, my mind racing. "What secrets?" I questioned, my mind racing. The guardian's lips curled into a sinister smile. "The secrets of life and death, of power and sacrifice. This place is a gateway, a threshold between worlds. Those who dare to cross must pay a price." My heart raced as I realized the truth. This place was not just a forgotten corner of the rainforest. It was a portal to another realm, a realm where the laws of nature were manipulated and souls were bartered. "Why have you brought me here?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You were chosen," the guardian replied. "Your soul, it carries a unique energy, a power that can tip the balance. You are the key to unlocking a new era, a time of great change." I felt a surge of fear and excitement. "What must I do?" "You must make a choice," it said, its eyes boring into mine. "A choice that will shape the destiny of this world. Will you embrace the power and become a vessel for change? Or will you reject it and face the consequences?" I stood there, frozen, the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders. The guardian's presence loomed, its eyes never leaving mine. I don't know," I stammered, my voice filled with uncertainty. "What if I make the wrong choice?" "There is no wrong choice," it replied. "Only the path you choose to walk. But remember, once the decision is made, there is no turning back." I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts. The air around me seemed to crackle with energy, as if the very fabric of reality was waiting for my verdict. "I choose to embrace the power," I said, my voice steady despite my trembling body. I will walk the path of change, no matter the cost. The guardian nodded, its expression unreadable. Then, my child, you shall be the catalyst. Your journey has only just begun. With that, it vanished, leaving me alone in the clearing. The trees seemed to sigh, as if relieved by my choice. I took a deep breath, feeling a newfound sense of purpose. The secrets of the Amazon, the mysteries of life and death, were now intertwined with my own destiny. I had chosen to embrace the unknown, and there was no turning back. As I stepped out of the clearing, the rainforest seemed to come alive once more. The birds sang, the insects buzzed, and the jungle breathed with a renewed vitality. I knew that my journey had only just started, and that the true horror and beauty of this place lay ahead.